Well, if you're able to hear us, this is Vicki Latham. We're getting ready to get started. David, do I need to click the start button? Building Strength webinars. Tonight, I'm going to do a presentation about healthy weight management for men and women, and we already have quite a few people who've joined us, and so welcome. We'll be starting in probably about 3 to 5 minutes, and we really appreciate your patience. I want to make sure that we're respecting people's time. My name is Vicki Latham. I'm a physician assistant. I've been working primarily in women's health over the last 30 years, and I've been working with helping people to manage their weight. And when I say weight management, this isn't just necessarily for people who want to lose weight, but for people who want to maintain their weight, people who may even want to gain weight. So once you understand the principles of how our body works, the physiology involved, then you can really dissect any diet, any fad diet, anything that you hear out there that you think might be a good idea, because we always want to work in harmony with our bodies and the way we're designed to function, because then things are going to work out the best. I like to start by telling you that I'm going to focus my comments tonight on 5 areas. I call these my 5 keys to optimal health, although almost the entire presentation is going to be focused on number 3, an excellent diet to maintain a healthy body weight. Now, it's very good news to know that change is possible. And people who do research on change find that 3 things must be in place for us to actually act on the things that we learn. We, number one, have to believe that that change really would be possible. We have to develop a vision for change. We have to believe that that change would be beneficial. It might be worth whatever sacrifice it will require, and that it will bring about a better future for us. And finally, we have to actually believe that we're able to do it, that we can find a way that's convenient to accomplish that change. I know there's lots of things that I believe would be possible and I believe would be good for me, but I just don't want to do it. And so I'm not going to change about that until I really find a way to incorporate it into my lifestyle and to believe that not only is it possible and good for tonight are some tools to help you believe that if maintaining a healthy weight is your goal, you can do it. And change happens best by taking baby steps. This is often called the small steps philosophy of change, which is that small steps taken in the same direction over time will take you to your goal. And weight loss is best accomplished by a daily commitment to walking out your lifestyle that will bring you to your weight loss goal. If you can lose 3 ounces a day, you can lose 100 pounds a year. So when you break it down to 3 ounces a day, that means that that extra cookie might completely blow that 3 ounces. And it's just that little bit here and a little bit there that adds to your effectiveness and your commitment to success in your weight loss goals. And I want this to be practical for you, so I hope you're taking notes, because I'm going to give you some websites that you can go to and things that you can research on your own. But I want you to try to learn 3 new things that I'm saying. So when you hear something that you've never heard before, I want you to write that down. And then at the end, out of those 3 things, I want you to choose one of them and set them as a goal for this week, so that this won't be just something you hear, but something that you will also do. Now, in my 5 keys to optimal health, number 1 is we must reduce our stress. I know personally, out of all 5, this is the one that's the hardest for me, and I think it's hard for all of us because we live such busy, hectic lifestyle. But what happens when we trigger that fight or flight response with really worrisome stress, sometimes real true danger, but often just imagine or worry or just overwhelming responsibilities, our cortisol can be very helpful because it increases our inflammatory responses, and cortisol in the body does some very good things. Sometimes we need some inflammatory responses in order to protect parts of our body. But when we have cortisol excess, because we are stressed all the time, then this turns out not to be very good, and it has some very serious consequences regarding maintaining our weight. One of the things that excess cortisol does is it suppresses our thyroid. And our thyroid function is what helps our metabolism and helps keep us burning calories. And if you suppress that, then you're more likely to gain weight and your metabolism is going to be more sluggish. It also affects blood sugar imbalances. You can ask anyone who's a diabetic what happens when they take prednisone. And prednisone is a steroid that basically mimics the functioning of cortisol in the body, and their blood sugar just goes sky high because of that. And even if you do not have diabetes, whenever you have excess cortisol, you're more likely to have an overall higher level of blood sugar, which is going to set you up for insulin resistance, something we're going to talk a lot about tonight. It also increases our abdominal fat. Now, none of us likes to have a big butt, but a big butt does not give you diabetes, and it doesn't raise your blood pressure, and it doesn't set you up for a heart attack. But abdominal fat does. You know, sometimes we think of fat as, you know, like you're cutting up a chicken and you see that little white fat piece and you pull that off and you throw that away. And we think about fat on our body as something that makes in our abdomens as being the same way. But actually you have to think about that this is the core of our body where we're maintained at around, 98 degrees. And at that level, this fat becomes quite liquid. And so when we have a lot of abdominal fat, basically our organs, our liver, our pancreas, fat interferes with normal metabolic processes of these organs. And when we have cortisol excess in our abdomen, so this is some of the things that stress can do. Now the next key is exercise. And we actually have 4 times more lymph fluid than we have blood. We have our heart to pump our blood, but what pumps our lymph fluid? Movement, exercise. That's what pumps our lymph. This increases the elimination of toxins, and it also revs up our metabolism. And it really doesn't matter a lot what you do, as long as you find something you love to do and do it every day. I was on my way to my ballet class today when I got a phone call from the office, and I had to go take care of an issue for a patient. And I just wanted to cry. I hate missing my dance class because not only is it a great stress reliever, but it's a calorie burner, and it's my lymph pumper. So to improve my lymph system, to improve my immune system, I know I need to pump my lymph. And so I missed that today. And I don't like missing it, and you shouldn't either. And as soon as you find something to do that you absolutely love to do, then you will want to do it. Exercise can almost become addictive, and when you don't do it, you really, really miss it. I talk about power walking because it's one of the simplest ways, and it's something that you can get in a power walk just with a very short amount of time. You can do a power walk just by parking your car at the outside edge of Walmart and power walking up into the store. Power walking is where you walk quickly enough, briskly enough, to raise your heart rate enough to become short of breath. When you become short of breath, then you want to count to about a count of 10 and then back off until your breath returns to normal. Then walk briskly again, get that heart going. Once you're short of breath, that means you've now run out of oxygen, so you're having to breathe faster to pump more oxygen into those muscles. And so when you do this over and over, it's been shown that just 20 minutes of power walking will increase your metabolism for up to 5 hours after you're done. So if power walking is something you can do, that's great. If you have bad knees, bicycling is actually really good. It develops your muscles around your knees and strengthens your knees, but it doesn't load your body. So if you're overweight enough that a lot of exercise causes you pain in your joints, in your lower extremities, then do some things like rowing, or they're starting to have these indoor rowing places, or biking, or something where spin classes, something where you're not loading on your body on your joints. But over time, as you lose weight, you'll be able to expand what you can do. Now, stress reduction, one of the very best things we can do in stress reduction is to exercise. Exercise, exercise, don't forget to exercise. There's nothing that will lower our stress more. In fact, it's been shown in numerous studies that exercise is as good at helping the body avoid depression as taking antidepressant pills. So if you want to get off your antidepressants, I'm not suggesting that you do, but if you want to, the best thing to start with is to go out there and exercise. Also, people who have strong spiritual faith, who practice prayer and meditation on a regular basis, greatly reduce their stress. You want to stretch and do a warm-up before you start. You don't want to just take off and start running, because your body then might think you're fighting or flighting and increase your cortisol. So stretch, tell your body, okay, we are going to now get ready to exercise. This warms up the muscles and reduces your risk of injury. You want to find a person that can be that helpful friend that you can share your life with and share your stress with. And when I say helpful friend, you want to find somebody who will truly have some skills in listening and can truly help you out. And finding an accountability partner, and you're starting any kind of new program, always have accountability. So find an accountability partner to work with you and have them help you with your exercise plan and to help with your stress reduction. And also make sure you're drinking a lot of water. Dehydration is a major stress to the body. For every 1% of dehydration your body is experiencing, you lose 14% of body strength. So when you see all of those athletes over there dousing down the Gatorade, that's because they do not want to get dehydrated. Those big bubbas got to run into other big bubbas, and they do not want to have a 14% loss in strength. And once you become dehydrated, sometimes just drinking water alone is not enough. You need some electrolytes to help to force that fluid back into the muscle. So drinking water, and if you become dehydrated, drinking something with electrolytes is going to really help reduce stress on the body. Now we're going to get to the major topic tonight, which is diet. Just in general, our diet should be a balanced choice of complex carbohydrates, high in fiber, with lean proteins and healthy fats. Foods eaten as close to naturally date as possible. You want to find locally grown produce if you can in your community. A lot of times there are organizations where you can buy in to a cooperative agriculture system. We have several of these here where I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where you pay one price weekly, and whatever the farmer grows, you go once a week and you pick up that produce, and it's fresh grown, and it's wonderful. There's cooperatives where you can help to get your food at a lower price or grow your own. And gardening is great exercise. Here's just some examples of some calories that you can burn while you're gardening. Now, if you weigh 200 pounds, just going out there and planting those seeds, it'll be spring soon, and I've got to get through this winter, but then after that, it'll be time to begin our planting. And just out there planting seeds can burn 400 calories an hour. Just going out on a daily basis and watering the garden can burn 75 calories. And mowing the yard with a power mower. So just think if you watered the garden and power walked at the same time. I bet you would burn a lot of calories doing that. It's just a really good way to help us figure out where we are in our overall body weight. And these categories have been created so that we can kind of match statistics to these particular indexes. The body mass index is a form of height and weight by centimeters squared, and it's quite a complex equation to figure out. But you can find charts on the internet. You can find charts everywhere. But this is my favorite way because this kind of really helps us to understand that if you see you've got your body mass index under 20 of those people who are in the underweight category, you have your normal weight category up to 25, the slightly overweight, the overweight, and the extremely overweight, or sometimes this is called morbidly obese. Now, the reason that it has that word, and no one really likes that morbid word, but what that means is that you can actually be overweight and not have diabetes, not have heart disease, not have things. Over time, you may develop it. But when you are extremely overweight, when your body mass index is over 40, you are going to have what we call comorbid factors. In addition to being overweight, you also are going to have at least insulin resistance, but you're well on your way to diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular, because, again, all of your organs are floating in this huge sea of liquid fat. And one thing that's interesting is that as you go from normal weight to slightly overweight, your risk for all of these things that we connect with becoming overweight, like diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, all these issues, the risk just slightly increases. But when you get to a BMI of 30, it escalates. Those risks just go through the roof. But as you're losing weight, as you drop from 30 down to 29, also all those risk factors greatly decrease as well. So I always want the first goal for every person to be a 10% weight loss, because 10% of weight loss has been shown to have incredible benefits metabolically, on the blood sugar, on your blood pressure. So many things are improved by a 10% weight loss. So that means if you weigh 260 pounds, you just need to lose 26 pounds. And so a 10% weight loss is always the first goal. But then the ultimate next goal is a body mass index of 29. And what you will learn in losing that 10%, you can carry out to get to a BMI of 29. And then if you want to go below that, that's fine. But get to 29. That's really, really critical. I think everyone knows that now we are having an obesity epidemic, and the cost to our society is absolutely astronomical. An estimated $174 billion is spent on issues related to health because of obesity. Remember, obesity is a body mass index over 30. I think this is really fascinating if you've never seen this, and also frightening. Back in 1990, and I don't know about you, but I can remember 1990 real well. 1990, there wasn't a single state that had more than 10% of people who had a body mass index over 30. But by 2008, there wasn't a single state but Colorado that had a body mass index less than 14%. Most of them in the 20 to 24 range. And I can tell you that my daughter lives in Colorado, and obesity in Colorado is highly frowned upon. It's just not socially conscious or acceptable. And so there's tremendous peer pressure for people to lose weight and to maintain a normal weight there. But also people do so many outdoor activities there, and I think that also contributes to the fact that they are the thinnest state in the U.S. In Oklahoma, we are not doing very well. We are the third state behind Louisiana and Mississippi in obesity in our adults, and our children aren't doing much better. Now, Kansas, our state to the north, they're doing better than we are in adult obesity, but really not any better in childhood obesity. And here is the major key, and this is going to be the emphasis tonight. This is going to be your Biochem 101 lecture here. And that is that if you want to maintain your weight and if you want to lose weight, you must avoid insulin resistance. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that means. Now, we all know that our glucose level in our blood sugar level, has a huge influence on our weight. But a lot of people just think of it as glucose and their pancreas. But actually your brain and your pancreas, your liver, your intestines, your fat cells, and your muscles all contribute to how your body handles your blood sugar level. In our pancreas, we have these hormones, glucagon and insulin. And hormones are chemicals in the body, and they are usually released from their target organ after being stimulated by the brain. For example, the thyroid has what's called the TSH, or the thyroid stimulating hormone. If the thyroid's not working very well, it needs stimulating. So the TSH from the brain, from the pituitary, stimulates the thyroid to function better. So if you test the TSH level and it's high, you know that that thyroid's sluggish. It is not working very well. And then you're going to have not only a sluggish thyroid, but low energy and a higher risk of weight gain because of the slowing of your metabolism. But if your TSH is extremely low, then that means it doesn't need any stimulation. Boy, that thyroid's just going to beat the band all on its own. And then that could be a case of hyperthyroid, so obviously it doesn't need any stimulation from the brain. We call this a feedback loop. And most of the hormones in the body have a brain, blood, hormone, target organ relationship. Now, I'm going to talk a lot about glucagon and insulin in a minute, so I want to mention some other hormones. In our fat cells, we have various hormones. One is adiponectin. Adiponectin is what makes our cells responsive to the insulin our pancreas secretes. Then we have our liver, which is involved, because if we need sugar in response to stimulation by glucagon, your liver will make sugar for you. It's called gluconeogenesis. It's new creation of sugar by the liver. Then we have our fat cells also, which if we are in a fasting state, it breaks down into something called ketone bodies. ketone bodies first like to feed the brain and the heart. But as they circulate in the blood, they tend to kill our appetite. So when we wake up in the morning and we haven't eaten for a long time, our bodies have been using ketones in order to supply energy primarily to our brain and heart, but to our body. So it's really important that we switch over from a fasting metabolism and using ketones as our source of energy to glucose metabolism, and to begin to actually use glucose as our source of energy. Then we have in our intestines glucagon-like peptides, which are released from the intestines, and these have a regulatory effect on our brain, telling our body that we are full, that we are satisfied, that it helps to delay gastric emptying so that we're not emptying our stomach out as quickly. And so it helps to curb our appetite. So all of these things are involved. A lot of people get this idea that fat is our enemy. And fat cells are not the enemy. We actually have a specific number of fat cells. Many of them we got in utero as a baby, and then we continue to produce fat cells until adulthood or puberty. Then we stop making fat cells. But we can make more fat cells if our BMI gets over 40. So that's another reason that you get into these comorbid factors when our BMI becomes over 40, because then we have so much weight, our fat cells actually begin to divide and we begin to produce more and more fat cells. A thin adult has about 40 billion fat cells, and an obese adult has 3 to 4 times that many fat cells that you developed in utero as a baby, as a child. And weight gain is basically when our fat cells fill up, and fat loss is when they empty out. So our fat cells never go away, but they're either full or flat. But our fat cells are also our friends, because most of our hormones are made from fat, including that hormone adiponectin that helps make our cells respond to insulin. They also insulate your body from cold. They pad your vital organs to protect them from damage. They create a lipid layer. So all of our blood vessels are made from fat. They are our energy storehouses, our essential vitamins, our what we call fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin K, vitamin E, vitamin D. Essential vitamins that we absolutely must have are enabled to be utilized by our bodies because of our fat cells. Now, glucose is a carbohydrate that our cells use as a major source of energy. And glucose concentrated in our blood by insulin. It is made in the pancreas by our beta cells, and it acts on our membranes to make them permeable to glucose. So when we've eaten, when the body turns what we've eaten, primarily if we have eaten a carbohydrate, because carbohydrates become glucose, then those carbohydrates are circulating in our blood, and then the insulin acts on our cell membranes so that our membranes become permeable to glucose, so that we can get the glucose that we've eaten out of our blood and into our cells where it is needed. Glucagon is a hormone made by the alpha cells in the pancreas, and they stimulate the liver to make glucose when we are fasting. When we are awake, it is completely appropriate to be hungry every 3.5 to 4 hours. And you probably should eat something every 3.5 to 4 hours. When we've been dieting and we're thinking of losing weight, sometimes we can get into this pattern where every time we eat, we start feeling guilty about it. And so we kind of put off eating as long as we can stand it. And that's really the worst thing that you can do. Because if you don't have enough glucose, your body has got to have it. So what's going to happen when you're fasting and not getting the glucose that your body needs, then glucagon is released, and it stimulates the liver to make sugar for us. And it doesn't say, well, your blood sugar is 60, we need to release enough, make enough glucose to raise your blood sugar 20 points and get it back up to 80. No, it just says make a bunch of sugar. So it just makes a bunch of sugar. So I kind of like to think of glucagon as the accelerator on our production, our own body's production of sugar. And I like to think of insulin as the brake, because whenever glucagon activates the liver to make this extra sugar, then that has to activate our bodies to kick out insulin in order to slow down that production of glucose so that we don't raise our blood sugars too high. And our human brain uses 20% of our glucose whether we are asleep or whether we're awake. So when the real true enemy of any diet is really low blood sugar, because when you get low blood sugar, you're going to activate glucagon. Glucagon is going to stimulate the liver. The liver is going to kick out excess sugar. And also, when you are having your brain getting the sugar that it needs, you completely lose your self-control. I don't know about you, but I have gotten to work where I've had a lovely breakfast, and I've walked into work and there's a big plate of donuts sitting there, and I can just walk right past them. It doesn't bother me at all. And then I've had other mornings where I've gotten up and rushed off to work, and when I get there, my blood sugar is low. And as I walk past the plate of donuts, they start screaming at me. And my brain starts saying to me, eat that donut or you are going to die. And because my brain cells literally are starving for glucose. So you have to keep your blood sugar stable because you have to keep your brain cells well fed. And low blood sugar is the biggest enemy of your diet. Now this is how we have this carbohydrate. Our body converts that food to glucose. Our body matches that glucose with an appropriate amount of insulin. The insulin comes and attaches to the receptor site on our cell membranes, whether it's the cells of our brain, the muscles of our body, the organs. Every cell in the body uses glucose as its source of energy for its metabolic processes, so it can make ATP and make more energy, and all of the functioning within the cell needs glucose. So your body, you eat the carbohydrate turns to glucose, the glucose stimulates an appropriate amount of insulin, the insulin comes and attaches onto the cell membrane, it opens up what becomes permeable to glucose, and glucose comes inside the cell. But over time, because of multiple reasons, what ends up happening is more insulin than glucose. And so begins to, longer can the glucose get out of the blood and into the cells where we need it. So what we do is we end up with a glucose-deprived cell that doesn't have as much energy, so you feel more fatigued, you just don't think as clearly, you don't feel as good, and you end up with glucose, excess glucose, out in the bloodstream that then your body has to go and store as energy. And when we store glucose in a fat cell, it pumps them up, and we gain weight. So insulin resistance, and that's what you call this when the cells begin to respond to the insulin so that the glucose does not get into the cells. We call this insulin resistance. Now over time, the body has to get that glucose inside the cell, so it kicks out more insulin, produces more and more and more insulin, because it's got to get that job done of overcoming that resistance in order to get that glucose that the cell needs inside the cell. So over time, these beta cells in the pancreas become so overworked that the pancreas wears itself out. Now there are many, many other factors. There are things called incretins, and these are peptides and hormones, again like GLP-1 that we discussed in the intestines, that affect how the brain, what messages the brain gets, affects our gastric emptying, and so if you empty out the stomach slower, then as your body is breaking down sugar a little at a time, the body does a much better way of handling it than if all of a sudden you give your body this humongous glucose load. So GLP-1 is, and there are several of these incretins. There are several different kinds, and they all have different effects. Then there is the effects of glucagon. Many people think that it is faulty functioning of glucagon that even begins this entire march towards diabetes. And the overproduction of glucagon, which then ends up with a corresponding overproduction of insulin, and then the development of the insulin resistance. Then there's the adiponectin, which is necessary to make the insulin responsive. So that is very important to the insulin. So that is very important. So that and I'm going to talk about that in a second. There's C-reactive protein and other inflammatory markers, because the more inflammation that's in our blood vessels, the more resistance we're going to have. Then we have ferritin. You've heard of people who have too high of iron levels. Well, this actually interferes with the way our body metabolizes glucose and insulin as well. And so high levels of iron can be detrimental, which is why you don't want to just take a supplement of iron if you're not anemic. Our body recycles our iron, and unless you're anemic, you don't need to take it, and you don't want to get yourself high levels of iron because you're taking too many iron supplements, because these high levels can interfere with our basic way of metabolizing glucose. And then there are racial groups, primarily African Americans and Hispanics and American Indians, or people of Indian descent, have much, much higher levels of problems with the way they deal with this. And some of it may be genetic, but we now know that much of this may be what is called epigenetic. Now, our genes don't change very quickly over time. It takes a long, 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 long time for our genes to change. But epigenetic factors can change within a generation. So epigenetic is the actual expression, the protein expression, the proteins that are working, are at work within our body. And so I hope this gives a lot of people hope, because many people have thought that obesity was genetic. You know, we're just everybody's always been overweight in our family, and that's just the way we are. We're just fat people in my family. And we've got the fat gene or whatever. But that's actually extremely, extremely rare. What actually happens is that it's epigenetic factors, many of which are environmental. It can be related to toxins. It can be related to diet, lifestyle, stress, and many, many other issues. Some of the groundbreaking research in epigenetic expression has shown that these changes can actually be passed 4 generations. So you smoking cigarettes now may actually be giving lung cancer to your children's children. And because of that, one person who has the factors that change the expression of their genes because of one of those issues that I mentioned can actually then pass that down. Plus, I mean, people say, well, this is the way we are in our family, but then you sit around their dinner table with them and you see that the quantity of food that they eat and the food choices that they make, obesity is just almost a given. So, so many things have to do with lifestyle, but I hope this gives you hope that what you may have thought were your genetic predisposition to having diabetes may not be genetic at all. It really may be an epigenetic change, and you really can do something about that. I mentioned adiponectin. I think it's important because it makes our receptor site more sensitive and therefore less resistant to insulin. And so this is how this all fits together, is that when we gain weight, our adiponectin levels go down. Then our bodies are less resistant to insulin. So then our pancreas has to kick out more insulin in order to overcome the insulin resistance so that we can get the glucose inside the cell. If we don't get the glucose inside the cell, the glucose gets stored as fat. We gain weight. Our adiponectin levels go down. We become more insulin resistant. We have to kick out more insulin to try to overcome the insulin resistance. And until we do, then our bodies don't get the glucose inside the cells get stored as fat, and you gain weight. You get more. So if you can see, this can really become just a real catch-22. And here's a scary fact. By the time your fasting glucose level is abnormal, you will have already lost 40 to 50% of the pancreatic function of your beta cells. And of course, when you can no longer produce insulin because you have worn out your pancreas, then you are diagnosed as being a diabetic. Here's the normal ranges for blood glucose. When you go in to be tested, your fasting glucose should be somewhere between 70 and 100. Kind of a borderline level would be 100 to 130. Although generally speaking, a fasting blood sugar over 120 is considered diabetes. Binding, but if you consistently have fasting glucoses over 120, you are going to eventually get that diagnosis. The gold standard really is to test your blood sugar 2 hours after eating. That really kind of tells you how your body is really handling glucose. So after you have eaten, it's normal for your blood sugar to rise, obviously. And you still should have some glucose in your blood. It shouldn't have all been pulled. If at 2 hours after eating, your blood sugar is the same or even less than your fasting, that means that you have not developed insulin resistance yet, but what is happening is that you are secreting so much insulin that it's actually pulling the glucose into the cells so quickly that instead of it taking 3.5 to 4 hours before you're hungry again, before your blood sugar levels drop down to where it's appropriate to be hungry again and eat again, your blood sugar is low at 2 hours. So you're secreting too much insulin so you're very early in this process. You haven't developed resistance yet, but you are pulling the sugar into your bloodstream too quickly. So, but if 2 hours after eating it's 100 to 145, that's completely appropriate, because that means at 3.5 to 4 hours, your blood sugar is going to be back down to your fasting levels, and then it's going to be appropriate for you to eat again. Borderline is going to be about 145 to 164, and anyone with a 2 hour consistently after eating of 165 or higher is a diabetic. Once we see that your fasting blood sugar is consistently over 120 and your postprandial, we call it, or your after eating 2 hour is more than 165, then we're not going to challenge you during a glucose tolerance test. We're not going to challenge you and then throw your blood sugar up into the 200, 300 range by giving you this big blast of sugar. So we do something called a hemoglobin A1C. This is hemoglobin A1C is a factor on our red blood cells, and over the lifetime of your red blood cell, which is about 3 months, you're going to have this factor collecting remnant particles of these particular parts of the glucose. It changes this factor on the red blood cell so that your hemoglobin A1C, if your blood sugar is normal, is going to, and it's going to be within these normal ranges, it's going to range 4.5 to 6.5. But if you've been consistently having in your blood and therefore attracting to and affecting the red blood cell because of this excess amount of sugar, if it's been in the 6 to 7, then you're going to mean that on average your blood sugar is going to be running in this higher range. And when it's 7 or higher, you're definitely a diabetic. You're definitely running blood sugars in the high range all the time. So your ideal goal is that you always want to keep your blood glucose level under 180. Over 180 is when you have enough glucose floating around in your blood to begin to do what we call at first microvascular damage and later macrovascular damage. Microvascular meaning it's going to first harm the capillary beds in the smallest blood vessels in the body, which are the eyes, the kidneys, and what we call end organs, our toes, our feet, our nerve endings, and the ends of our fingers. So you're going to affect these smallest capillary beds first, and we call that microvascular disease, until eventually then it's going to begin to affect and create inflammatory responses in our major blood vessels, and eventually into our heart, our liver, and our pancreas, and our other major organs, and then we call it macrovascular disease. Now I want to mention this just kind of for women, that one of the things that happens when we have these elevated levels of insulin, they can also cause excess production of estrogen, and it can cause an overstimulation of our ovarian follicles. So you produce many, many follicles. Instead of one dominant follicle that ovulates each month, you can end up with multiple follicles. This can affect our fertility. It can cause something called premature ovarian failure, where you basically use up all of your follicles because of this overstimulation of follicles. And it can also increase our testosterone, giving you the potential for what's called hirsutism. And that's where you see women developing male pattern hair, such as beards, chest hair, that sort of thing. Another sign and this is true of men and women, of elevated insulin is acanthosis nigricans, which is, it's a kind of a silky darkness. It looks like you need to wash your neck. And you wash it, but it still stays kind of brown around your neck. And this is a sign that you have excess insulin. So you're beginning that process of overworking your pancreas. Also, having skin tags is a sign, getting those little skin tags on your skin. And you're going to start noticing that in people now, and you're going to know that that's a person who has too much insulin stimulation. And so because of this, you can overstimulation of the follicles, you develop polycystic ovarian syndrome. You can have irregular periods, infertility, and it often goes as a comorbid factor. It runs with metabolic syndrome, which causes central obesity, high blood pressure, hyperlipidemia, high triglycerides, high cholesterol. And statistics are that because of our high levels of overweight now, that PCOS can be as high as in 30% of women. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about diet. Okay, all foods can be broken down into these major food groups. All foods are either carbohydrates, proteins, fats, or fibers. Now, some foods can almost equally be in many categories. For example, dairy is a carbohydrate. Dairy products are also a protein. And unless they have had the fat removed, they are in the fat category as well. Nuts and seeds, they are in the carbohydrates. They are carbohydrates. They also have some significant protein, but really their other major claim to fame is in the fact that they have they're excellent sources of unsaturated fat. The omega fats, the ones we want, the omega-3 fats. But in general, these foods are all the foods that we eat, and they fall within these categories. And our body digests carbohydrates first, which it turns into glucose, proteins, which it turns into amino acids, fats, which get turned into essential fatty acids, and fiber, which gets turned into, when you eat something, a meal, first your body's going to digest the carbs and turn it into glucose. It's going to digest the proteins, then the fats, then the fiber. So the more fiber there is in the food that you're eating, the longer it's going to keep you full. So you want to eat as much fiber in your diet as possible, especially when you're eating your carbohydrates. Now, I guess not. Okay. I say high glycemic and low glycemic. Now, I didn't make them good and bad like I kind of did with fats. And really, these are not really bad fats, but they are saturated fats, and they do tend to give us an abnormal lipid profile versus our unsaturated good fats that really actually help us have good lipids and good function, excellent hormones, and other good things. So these are a little bit easier to say, yeah, these are your really good fats, and you really want to focus your diet on these fats. Carbohydrates, these are good carbohydrates, and these are good carbohydrates. But what we want to talk about is their function in the way your body handles the glucose that they turn into. High glycemic basically means that they cause your body to release a lot of insulin. They're generally high in calories. They turn to sugar, to glucose, very quickly, and depending on how you cook them or what form of them you choose, they can be high in fiber or not. So your breads can be high fiber, whole grain bread, or it can be fluffy white bread with no fiber at all. And so that fluffy white bread is going to stimulate a lot of insulin and is going to turn to glucose very quickly. Something that a lot of people think of as a health food is rice cakes. Rice cakes turn to glucose almost instantly. So if you're going to have one, you've got to have a whole grain rice cake, hopefully. Maybe stick some peanut butter, which is actually a legume. Put some peanut butter on it to slow it down. Maybe even put some chia or some kind of fiber source also on that rice cake, because you've got to slow that down. Otherwise, it is going to turn to glucose so quickly that it is going to stimulate so much insulin, it's going to be able to get pulled into the cells fast enough, and it's more likely it's going to end up roaming around and get turned into fat. That's going to be lower in its glycemic index. Bananas, because they're starchy, can turn to glucose quickly and can stimulate quite a lot of insulin. And of course, we all think about sugar. Now, grains are not bad. Wheat, millet are wonderful, wonderful grains, and that's why you want to eat them and include them in your diet, not processed and mixed with lots of sugar. Our low glycemic, you can just pretty much eat as much as you want out of these things. Fruit juice is kind of in the middle because it's going to turn to sugar so quickly because all the fiber is usually removed. Now, if you fresh squeeze an orange, it's going to have a lot more fiber, and it's going to be less glycemic than juice that comes out of a can and has already had all of its fiber removed. Your veggies, of course, aren't naturally high in fiber. Beans, naturally high in fiber. Legumes, nuts, seeds, and even dark chocolate, which I'm going to give you some really great stats about why dark chocolate can be something that helps to keep you on your diet, and yet can be, if it's the right kind of chocolate, can be actually helpful for you. And dairy products, very low glycemic, are carbohydrates, but turn to sugar extremely slowly. Then you have your proteins, again, your fats, and your fiber. Now, these are some carbohydrates that can actually increase your insulin resistance, because these things can cause your body to stimulate more insulin production. When you think back of that chart that I showed you about 1990 and now 2008, it was in the 90s that they began to add MSG to our food on a massive level. And it comes in really, literally hundreds of names. So if you've got a cookie that you made at home and you've got a cookie that you bought in the store that has MSG, you're actually going to stimulate more insulin eating the store-bought cookie than you are the homemade cookie without MSG. So when you think of it being added to almost everything that you buy that's processed, this can contribute to insulin resistance and long-term weight gain. Also, in the 90s is when we began to have artificial sweeteners. And people would say, well, it doesn't have any sugar in it, so now I can have 2 cookies instead of 1. But what actually ended up happening was that just stimulated more and more insulin because they were eating more and more high glycemic carbohydrates. High fructose corn syrup causes your body to secrete more insulin than regular corn syrup does, again contributing to insulin resistance. Sodas in any kind, it is a massive amount of sugar. If it's not a diet, but even diet, then you've got the artificial sweetener component. So all of these things. Even fruit juice in excess. You know, I think of all these little kids who walk around in their little tippy cups and their little tippy cups and they're drinking fruit juice all day long. Fruit juice, fruit juice, fruit juice. Well, this is a large amount of sugar for your body to handle all at once. Probably 2 ounces of fruit juice at a time is as much as your body really can handle. And yet people will go in the store and they'll buy a big 8-ounce glass of fruit juice. And it's just too high glycemic. It's not nutritionally bad, it's just too much sugar. Of course, all our refined carbohydrates, everybody knows about white sugar, white flour, that sort of thing. And then nitrosamines that come from our nitrates and processed meats. Here in Oklahoma, we have a lot of these in our well water, and it can increase insulin resistance. In fact, there was a study that showed that women who ate a lot of lunch meat, hot dogs, bologna, you know, those kinds of things that have lots of nitrates added to them in this processing actually had higher risk of having a child with born with type 1 diabetes. And again, that goes back to those epigenetic factors, that a lot of these food additives come and sit on our receptor site, blocking the uptake of insulin. And so when the insulin can't do what the insulin needs to do, then again the pancreas has to kick out more insulin, and you end up with higher circulating insulin levels. And by the way, high circulating insulin levels make it extremely difficult for the body to break down fat. So high circulating insulin is a huge issue when you are trying to lose weight. Now here's some carbohydrates that support normal blood sugar. Stevia is my favorite natural way to have a low-calorie sweetener. This naturally sweet herb does not raise insulin levels. It has virtually no calories. It is actually healthy for the pancreas, and it actually reduces insulin resistance. When you're going to eat fruit, eat whole fruit. Then you are getting the whole high fiber content, and you're getting enzymes that haven't been altered. The pH of the fruit hasn't been changed from the way it is when it's turned into juice. So overall, you're going to have much better blood sugar by just eating fruit. Your healthy fats that are also carbs, your nuts, seeds, and avocado, excellent carbohydrates that support a sustained blood sugar. Veggies, all are leafy greens, they're all high in fiber, and they're high in flavonoids, which I'm going to talk about later, because it's very important for diabetics to eat lots of foods with flavonoids. Our beans and legumes, very low in calories, very high in fiber, very low glycemic, stimulate very little insulin. And 70% dark chocolate. Now, all the studies that have been done that show the benefits of dark chocolate is with 70%. And I'll tell you the key to eating dark chocolate, because dark chocolate can be bitter if you chew it. But if you just lay it on your tongue and let it dissolve, it usually takes away most, if not all, of the bitterness. I love to support dark chocolate for people when they're dieting, because we just really start feeling deprived and like we never get to have any fun. But really the benefits of dark chocolate are absolutely astounding. This is one of my favorite websites, and I hope you'll write this down. because you can go to PubMed.gov and type in broccoli, and you'll find out all the studies on broccoli. If you're taking a statin drug, you can go to PubMed.gov and type in their search engine for the statin drug that you're taking, or insulin, or any medication, any food, any chemical, and it will tell you the studies that have been done. This is our basically our Library of Congress involving medications and medical studies on all of these things. And in PubMed, I found this many studies on chocolate and this many studies on dark chocolate. It is very high in antioxidants and flavonoids, and we are recommended to have a high level of antioxidants and a high level of flavonoids every day. In diabetes research on chocolate, it actually helps the body utilize sugar better and helps decrease the complications of diabetes. It increases our sensitivity to insulin. It helps our body to use our insulin better. Its high antioxidant content combats some of the detrimental effects of diabetes, primarily to our blood vessels. It helps to protect them from the scarring that can happen due to excess glucose and excess insulin. Neuropathy, as your sugar levels are high, that sugar can actually damage your nerves and create a problem called neuropathy, where you get these hypersensitive, painful nerve pathways. And dark chocolate's been shown to minimize neuropathy symptoms. It also lowers your blood pressure just as effectively as a beta blocker and ACE inhibitors. Again, only 70% dark chocolate is going to give you these benefits. This was a study on epicatechins and flavonoids, and these are found abundantly in dark chocolate. And remember, dark chocolate's just made from beans, just eating some beans. But in these diabetic mice, they gave them drinking water with just even a very small amount of this flavonoid or epicatechen-rich flavonoid. And they matched them with lean, non-diabetic mice. And after 15 weeks, half of the ones that did not get the flavonoids had died, compared with only 8% of the diabetic mice. And the diabetic mice should have been, obviously, not had the longevity of normal mice. They both had the same diet and they had the same body weight. And so they found that this epicatechen-infused water showed significant reduction in the deterioration of their blood vessels, less fat accumulated in their liver, and less levels of inflammation and better LDL cholesterol. So wonderful stuff. Now, when you get your chocolate with raw cacao, it's going to be superior because it maintains all of these flavonoids. Heating does reduce it. So you want to get chocolate made from raw unheated cacao. Now, there are several brands that you can find, but you're going to have to go to a health food store usually to get it. Now, one of my favorites is one called Chava brand. It has 750 milligrams of flavonoids and 37,000 antioxidants. And it is made from raw unheated cacao. And it's only 40 calories, which I find a lot of the dark chocolates are a little higher in calories. And so this is my favorite one, but really any 70% dark chocolate that's made of raw cacao is going to be excellent. The basal ganglia in our brain is also affected by chocolate. This is a part of our brain that's important for motivation, focus, vigilance, and pleasure. Now, when you're on a diet, you want to be motivated, you have to be focused, you have to be very vigilant, and you're lacking pleasure very often. So anything that's going to enhance your pleasure centers and make you feel better is going to be good. And this was with that Chava chocolate, showed an increased activity in this part of the brain with that. So we eat chocolate when we feel happy, and we eat chocolate when we feel sad. but it actually does increase serotonin in the brain and enhance the feel-good parts and decreases anxiety and cravings. And cravings is a major, major problem when we're dieting. So just adding a little bit of chocolate, all of the studies that I've quoted were done with 6 grams of chocolate, not a massive amount, but you can get this kind of great benefit from a very small amount, plus that sense of I'm not deprived. So I actually made a website called My Weight Loss Chocolate so that you can learn about how chocolate can help you to stay on your diet. Now, I don't like diets that are, I guess, what you would call fad diets, because diets don't work, only lifestyle changes. And anything that is going to be something you cannot live with forever and that can't be the way you're going to change, you're going to make those changes, you're going to believe it's possible, you're going to see that it's beneficial, and you're going to believe you can do it. And so I want you to have a diet that you develop for yourself that you can make a lifestyle, because then you can maintain it long enough to reach your ideal weight, and then you'll be able to maintain your ideal weight. Now, a diet that's very, very popular out there is the low carbohydrate diet. This is sometimes called the Atkins diet or has various other names. This is where you only primarily eat protein and fat. You're eliminating the carbohydrates. Therefore, you're eliminating the glucose. Therefore, you are eliminating the secretion of insulin. So let's say that an average healthy person fasting insulin level is 8. And after they eat a meal, it's 50. Well, it's not uncommon for people who are in the early stages, when they are just in the stage of developing diabetes where they have insulin resistance. It's not uncommon for their insulin levels to be 35 to 50. And they haven't eaten anything yet. So then when they eat something, especially when they eat a carbohydrate, their insulin level may go to over 100. And remember, high circulating levels of insulin increase insulin resistance and prevent the breakdown of fat. So you're on a diet, you're trying to lose weight, but every time you eat, you raise your insulin levels and make it extremely difficult for your body to break down that fat that you're wanting to lose. So if you eat only protein and fat, then you're not stimulating. So even though your blood sugar, your insulin level is 35, if after you eat it's still 35, you're just like a normal person as far as your insulin is concerned. And that's why these diets work, is because you're not eating foods that stimulate insulin. However, can you live on a diet of nothing but protein and fat long term? Would you want to? Would you not want to enjoy a beautiful fresh peach, a piece of watermelon, a bowl of oatmeal? Never for the rest of your life? Of course not. Nobody wants to live like that long term. So sometimes maybe for a week, just to calm your insulin levels down, sometimes to go on a protein and fat diet can be okay. But eating all of this fat, most of the time you're going to eat a lot of excess saturated fat, because this fat tends to go along with our proteins, the ones that come from animals at least. And so eating all this protein and fat is very, very hard on your kidneys. A byproduct of all of the protein can make you be at higher risk of developing excess uric acid and gout. And and this is hard on your kidneys, and when you are in pre-diabetic or diabetic state, we've got that microvascular problem going on. So our kidneys might be struggling a little bit anyway. So this diet long term is really not healthy for the body. Short term can be. And does it work? It works very well. People do lose a lot of weight on this diet. But it's not something that's going to be lifestyle. And also, too, because it's such a boring diet, a lot of people don't eat adequate calories. And they get into calorie deprivation, and they're losing weight because of that as well. That slows their metabolism. They go back to eating normally. They gain their weight back right away. So don't like those low carbohydrate diets. Low fat diets. Now, our body, fat is what makes us feel full. So when you eat a diet without fat, you tend to be hungry all the time. And if you think back, what was another thing that was popular? They added food additives, everybody started eating sugar-free everything, and they also started eating fat-free everything. So again, well, not only does this cookie not have any sugar, it doesn't have any fat. So instead of having one cookie, I'll have two or three. And so over time, because we didn't have the fat that we needed in our diet, and we were hungry all the time, we tended to gain weight. So, and remember, fat, we make our hormones out of fat. There are many, many metabolic processes. Our brain has a high need for fat. Blood vessels are made from fat. We need fat in our diet. Fat is not the enemy. So I don't like low-fat diet. However, I do like low saturated fat diet. Eliminating a lot of the animal fat from our diet is a very good thing. Oh, and I just wanted to mention, my favorite oils are to go ahead and get the cold-pressed oils. They usually do not cost much more, maybe 75 cents to $1 more on a whole big bottle to get the cold-pressed olive oil, the cold-pressed grapeseed oil. Those are the two oils that I use most because I love the grapeseed because it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. There have been some studies that show that grapeseed oil may even have a protective effect from Alzheimer's. So I love to use grapeseed oil. And olive oil was very well known to be very good for you. Nuts, seeds, avocado, and then fish and fish oil, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit when I talk about supplements. But these fats, we don't need much. Now, if you are going to use a butter type product, go for butter. The trans fats that are in many of the margarines aren't really great. I saw the other day on there's something that's half olive oil, half butter. Thought that wasn't too bad of a choice as long as you limit it to a small amount. And these are your omega-6 fatty acids primarily, and these are your omega-3s. And you don't want to eat only omega-3s. You do need some of the omega-6. You do need some balancing of these. So these aren't all bad, but you do want to limit them because these are the ones that will cause an abnormal lipid profile. Low-calorie diet. Don't want to eat low calories. You always, always, always want to eat at least 1,200 calories a day. And if you're big and tall, it's probably going to be 1,400 to 1,600. Just to make your heart beat and your blood flow and walk around and breathe, you need 1,200 calories. It's what you call your base metabolism rate. Now we little people, I'm not very tall, I'm only 5'2", so I don't need a tremendous amount of calories because I'm little. Even if I want to eat more, I'm just a little person and I don't need as many calories versus my son who's 6'3". He needs a lot more calories just to breathe and pump his blood and all those things. But never, 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 never eat less than 1,200 calories a day because it's just going to slow your metabolism down, and then when you do start eating more, your metabolism is going to slow and you're just going to gain weight even faster. Also, when you don't eat enough calories, your body tends to use lean body tissue. You get into more blood sugar issues, you kick out more glucagon, you increase your risk of insulin resistance and overstimulation of insulin. You tend to burn lean body tissue, and then the very thing that burns calories for you, which is your muscles, are going to be compromised. And so I've seen situations where people start out with, let's say, 160 pounds, and out of that 160 pounds, they're 120 pounds of muscle and 40 pounds of everything else. But then after eating abnormally and not eating adequate calories, now maybe they're still 160 pounds, but now they're actually 60 pounds of fat and only 100 pounds of lean body tissue. So now they don't have enough of the parts of the body that actually burn calories available to burn calories. So it affects their ability to lose weight when they are trying to lose. So you don't want to lose your lean body mass. You want to create more lean body mass because that's what's going to burn more calories. Ketone production can be a normal part of your metabolism, like I said, but in excess it can be toxic to your body. It can change the pH of your blood, and they decrease your appetite. I know a lot of people say, well, I wake up in the morning and I don't have any desire to eat till lunch. Well, that's because your ketones are killing your appetite. But you are not switching over to glucose metabolism. You're staying in that glucagon, your liver making extra sugar, eating your ketones, eating yourself basically, breaking down ketones. This is not a healthy way for your body to be metabolizing. So you want to get up and you want to eat. One of my diet rules is that you want to get up and eat within 45 minutes of waking up. And you really should wake up, and the very first thing you should break your fast with is water. You want to replenish the water that you've lost overnight so you're not dehydrated, and then you need to eat something right away, primarily protein or a complex carbohydrate. In other words, a low glycemic carbohydrate, not a high glycemic carbohydrate. One of my favorite breakfasts, and I recommend you try this, is an egg and half of an avocado. It's an amazing breakfast. But one of the biggest things that with these low-calorie issues is that people tend to not eat anything till lunch. They eat a small lunch, and then they get to dinner, and they eat their reasonable dinner, and they should feel like, well, that should be enough for the day. But what happened was they ate a 400-calorie no breakfast, a 400-calorie lunch, a 300, 400-calorie dinner. They're at 800 calories, and maybe they need to eat 2,000 calories. They need to eat another 1,200 calories to maintain their weight. So what happens is a few minutes after dinner, they start eating, and they're like, I don't know why I'm so hungry. I've just eaten dinner, and they just keep eating and eating and eating and eating, and they eat until they fall asleep. And then they wake up in the morning, and they're also a little bit not hungry because they're really still kind of full from eating so late at night. You do not want to get to dinner calorie deprived. You want to eat about 1,000 calories during the day, and then about a 400-calorie dinner. You've heard the old thing, you have breakfast like a king, lunch like a commoner, and dinner like a pauper. And it's really, really true. You do not want to get to dinner calorie deprived. Just consume your calories, 400, 500 calories for breakfast, 400, 500 calories for lunch, 400 to 500 for dinner, 100 or 200 calorie snacks. You've got there 1,400, 1,500 calories all day. You've eaten all day. Your blood sugars have been stable all day. Your brain's been fed. You've been able to think. Your emotions have been better, and you actually will end up the next day having lost your 3 ounces that you need to give you your overall weight loss. So low-calorie diets do not work. Food combining diet, vegetarian or vegan diets, and raw food diets. Wonderful diets. I kind of call this dieting, if this is diet 101, this is diet 202. And it's much more complex to talk about all these issues. So if you want to contact me at my website, I'll be glad to send you a summary of the information I've given you tonight in this presentation, some information on vegetarian and vegan diet, and on food combining diet. Food combining is putting the foods together that digest together the best, so that you get the maximum nutrition, the maximum satisfaction, and the least gastrointestinal upset from the foods that you eat. But it's quite contrary to the American way of eating, and so I will be glad to send you that information if you want to contact me. And a lot of this information I'm going to be putting in a book that I have coming out in the summer, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that when that's finished. And finally, my favorite, the low, high glycemic carbohydrate diet, which is eating low glycemic foods, lean protein, and healthy fats with as much fiber as possible. So we're back to my original recommendation. Eat a diet made primarily low glycemic foods, proteins, healthy fats, and fiber. Now, if we ate like this all the time, we would have all the nutrition we need, we wouldn't exceed our calories, we would have a very balanced diet. But again, can you live like this as lifestyle? Do you want to never get to have any of these? No. So my recommendation, especially when you're working to lose weight, is to eat only 1 or 2 of these daily, and to eat them in the highest fiber form possible, so that even though they are high glycemic, the fiber will slow down how fast your body turns them into glucose, and since it's not in excess, it will be all right. Now, if you will notice, I'm back to where you get to eat everything. I'm not going to tell you any food that you can't eat. But you can't have toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, and pizza for dinner. Just too many high glycemic carbs. But you can have some cultured dairy, which is the very best way to eat dairy, with lots of probiotics. Have some yogurt and fruit for breakfast. Maybe for lunch, have a handful of nuts and seeds. For a snack, mid-morning, about 100 calories of those. Have for lunch, maybe some lean meat or some beans and grains if you're a vegetarian, and some steamed vegetables. Then for lunch, maybe have a piece of whole fruit, for a snack, a piece of whole fruit. And then for dinner, you can have a couple of pieces of pizza with a large amount of salad. Now you have eaten from all of the food groups. You've had a well-balanced diet. You have only had 2 high glycemic carbs today, and you've eaten well. And that diet that I just described is about 1,400 calories. So you will have lost weight. So when you eat very low in these high glycemic carbs, that's a diet you can live with. And you can eat everything. You just have to make choices. Now, the American Dietetic Association and the American Diabetes Association, if you are a diabetic, they describe what they call food exchanges. And again, it's kind of a diet made of choices. This is the website for the American Diabetes Association, and it is an excellent website with all kinds of wonderful information and dietary recommendations and menus and recipes and all kinds of facts for understanding what it's like to be diabetic. But I personally find that these food exchanges are very difficult, and most of my patients really, they don't get it. They just have a really hard time trying to figure out how many carbs, how many this, how many that. And I find my diabetic patients do very well on just doing the low glycemic index diet. If you want to know what the actual glycemic index, the amount of insulin, the amount of calories, and how it affects how much insulin your body secretes, if you want to know about that, for each food, you can go to glycemicindex.com. And so I find that people do extremely well, and their blood sugars stay remarkably stable when they eat the low glycemic diet. And they still get to eat some of everything. They just have to make good choices again, but it's not as much counting. I'm not trying to replace the American Diabetes Association. They have tons of studies showing their effectiveness, but I've found this to be I've been teaching people to eat this way now for 30 years, and most of the people who will eat this way will lose about 2 pounds a week. Now, 2 pounds a week may not sound like a lot to you, but that's 100 pounds in a year. And I do want to make this disclaimer that nothing in this presentation is intended to replace the advice given to you by your healthcare provider. You should always consult with your personal physician or healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, to your medications, your exercise regimen, or before making lifestyle changes. And also make sure that they're aware that when you are taking nutritional supplements, herbs, different kinds of complementary and alternative treatments. So I'm not trying to displace the advice you get from your physician. I want to just kind of briefly go over some of the medications that for those of you who are diabetic and explain now what these medicines do for you, because a lot of people don't really understand. They just know somebody gave them metformin and they don't really know why they're taking it. Insulin restores our baseline insulin levels. It lasts. I love these baseline insulins. So many people who are diabetic are terrified of going on insulin. In their mind, they feel, now I'm on insulin, I failed. And I don't feel that way at all. In fact, I love to give people baseline insulin and restore their insulin levels. And I have seen that if we can restore your insulin levels and normalize your blood sugar, and then you lose a lot of weight and you change your diet, I've seen people get off of this. Because even though maybe you lost that 40 to 50% of the functioning of the beta cell, sometimes they can restore if you take away the stresses that got them damaged in the first place. The longer you've been a diabetic, of course, the harder it's going to be for your pancreas to rejuvenate. But where you may not have enough insulin to be 300 pounds, you may have adequate insulin to be 200 pounds. And so as you lose weight, as you eat better, as you change your diet and your lifestyle, you reduce your stress, you exercise more, you have the nutrients that you need, sometimes adding insulin to your regimen can be just incredible. And often, this is all we need to do, is just, if in the beginning, if you're haven't been a diabetic very long, just giving you back that baseline insulin that you need is going to make a huge, huge difference for you. The common ones are Lantus and Levomir because they're time release. They release it like your body does over time. And then the Ultra Linty, which does last a long time, but it does give you a big rush and then it falls off, where the Lantus and Levomir are like kind of like a time release, just and release like your pancreas does. They have rapid-acting insulins also that you don't take these if you're not going to eat, because they are going to give you such a big shot of insulin. They're going to pull. It's going to create low blood sugar for you, just like can happen in the beginning when you're overstimulating your pancreas. These do the same thing. These give you huge amounts of insulin, and you eat these only just before you have a meal so that you have all the insulin that you need for that meal, and they're fully acting in your body in about 20 minutes. So you do not want to take it and not eat. Then there's the short-acting, which take a few hours to actually get going. And those are kind of what we call regular insulin, and we put those on often a sliding scale, depending on you test your blood sugar, and depending on what your sugar is, then you add these short-acting insulins. And then we have the medium-acting insulins, and sometimes those are premixed, where you have some fast-acting and some long-acting mixed together. Other treatments that are used for diabetes is metformin. I really like this medication, especially in the first 6 months that you take it. It has a powerful effect on helping with weight loss. However, it seems that after you've been on it about 6 months, you don't get the weight loss. So when I put somebody on this, particularly if they really want to really work on weight loss, I want them to be very serious about that, because I don't want to waste that 6-month window when we first start using this drug, because I've often seen people lose, if they don't do anything, they usually lose 5 or 6 pounds. But if they really will cooperate with their diet, it's not been uncommon for me to see 40 to 60 pound weight losses by putting people on metformin. And what metformin does is that glucagon-stimulated gluconeogenesis in the liver is blocked. It doesn't make, the liver isn't making sugar for you anymore. It makes some, of course, but enough that you don't get low blood sugar, but it isn't going to be making an excessive amount. So you don't need to, if it doesn't make excessive amounts of glucose, then you don't have to match that with excessive amounts of insulin. So it helps to lower insulin resistance. It's used a lot in people with polycystic ovarian syndrome who have high insulin levels to help lower that. And those people are not diabetic, but they have the PCOS, and so metformin is a common thing. And some people who have infertility, they'll use metformin and they'll begin ovulating again because they're not overstimulating their estrogen and so forth. But I really like this drug to help with weight loss, and it's an incredibly safe drug as long as you don't take it if you're dehydrated. So if you're vomiting, you're having diarrhea, you're out in the desert hiking the Grand Canyon, don't take it because you're going to be dehydrated, and then it can concentrate and it can be damaging to your body. So, but if you're not dehydrated, incredibly safe and very effective drug, very good for helping with lowering glucose levels. These next two are, I'm not even going to, I never can pronounce them. Rosiglitazone I do pretty well on, the other one I've never been able to pronounce. But what this does is it reduces insulin resistance. It does kind of the same thing that the adiponectin naturally does in our body, of making our receptor sites for insulin responsive to insulin. And but it causes weight gain, and it has some cardiac risk factors. And these drugs have really fallen out of favor and are not used as often because primarily of their side effects. But their main function was to reduce insulin resistance, make the receptor sites more sensitive to the insulin that you have. Exenatide is a drug that's made out of Gila monster saliva. And they found that people who got bit by Gila monsters often had severe hypoglycemia. And it found out that this chemical that it secretes stimulates the pancreas to make more insulin, and so lowers your blood sugar levels. And it also slows gastric emptying, so your food sticks around a little longer and doesn't turn into sugar as quickly. So hopefully you've gotten up and exercised and used some of it up. It suppresses the secretion of glucagon, so you're not overstimulating secretion of estrogen and not overstimulating your liver to make more sugar. And it also improves satiety responses in the brain, and it encourages weight loss. So you do see some weight loss with this. It does have some GI side effects. This next one is called Victoza, and I can't pronounce the generic name on that either. The exenatide is Byetta, and Victoza is a GLP-1 receptor agonist, which this GLP-1 pulses, and it's something our intestines make. I talked about that earlier, and it only lasts a couple of seconds. And what this does is it increases the ability for the GLP to last longer. And so it helps the glucose actually get pulled into our muscles better. It suppresses glucagon again. It slows gastric emptying. It improves satiety responses in the brain, and it encourages weight loss. It does have some GI side effects. The DPP-4 inhibitors, they actually block the body from breaking down its own natural GLP so quickly. So, as I said, it only lasts a couple seconds in the body. It keeps it from breaking down. So where the Victoza actually puts GLP back in your system, these prevent your own body's GLP from breaking down. So you get the same basic effects, the suppression of glucagon, the slowing gastric emptying, improved satiety response in the brain. Satiety is a word that means feeling full, feeling satisfied from eating. And it's weight neutral. It doesn't help with weight loss, but it doesn't cause weight gain. Then the alpha glucosidase inhibitors, they help break down starches. And I'm going to talk about fiber, but they basically do the same thing fiber will do for you. It blocks the breakdown of starch, so you don't absorb as much of the sugars. It's weight neutral. It has lots and lots of GI side effects. The next, maglitides stimulate the pancreas to make more insulin. They're weight neutral, and they can, however, increase your risk for low blood sugar. And then the sulfonylureas, and these are the oldest drugs. They've been around for since, I don't know, 50s, maybe 40s. They were like the first diabetes drug. They're very inexpensive, totally generic, and they're the $4 drug, month supply, and they stimulate the pancreas to make more insulin. So when your pancreas is wearing out, I call it, these are the drugs that beat a dying horse. Your pancreas is wearing out, and so it stimulates it to try to make more and more and more. It stimulates more weight gain, so therefore you get lower adiponectin levels, more insulin resistance. Your pancreas needs to make more insulin, and it stimulates your pancreas to make more insulin. You get more hyperinsulinemia, wears out your pancreas faster, and it can increase your risk for low blood sugar. You can tell I'm not so fond of these drugs. I mean, we just have so much better drugs. When you consider you've got these other things, the DPP-4, the Victoza, and the Byetta, and the metformin. I mean, they're just much better drugs, and they help improve weight loss. And anything that's going to help weight loss is going to improve your chances of being a healthier diabetic, or maybe even create those epigenetic changes that will help you to really see a positive outbreak. When people find out they're diabetic, they just go, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a diabetic," and I go, "Yeah, that means you now have to eat the way the rest of us all should." Now, weight loss is the only thing that I know of that will increase adiponectin, except for there is a wonderful mushroom called the Agaricus blasi mushroom. You can buy it in supplements, and it actually increases adiponectin in the body by 40%. It's also high in beta-glucans, and these mushroom supplements can help your body fight cancer. So amazing, amazing studies, over 670 published studies, most of them on using it with people who are in the battle against cancer. But what I love for weight loss is the fact that it will increase your adiponectin, so it will improve insulin resistance, decrease insulin resistance, and improve insulin sensitivity. Dietary fiber is an amazing thing. If you are a diabetic, even if you're not, we all should be eating a lot of dietary fiber. We have soluble and insoluble fiber, which delays gastric emptying, the same thing many of those drugs are doing, so that our body's breaking down our sugar much more slowly. It slows the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream, and it also helps get some of the fat actually out of our diet. It actually will combine with a lot of the fat, particularly the saturated fat, and eliminate that from our body so that that fat doesn't get into our bloodstream. So when you eat a meal with fat, that's when you want to take your fiber supplement. And the more fiber you add to your diet, the better. They recommend 20 to 35 grams of fiber daily, and the average American only gets 7 to 10 grams. Now we're going to switch a little bit. We talked about diet, and now we're going to switch, and we're going to talk a little bit about toxins. We live in a really toxic world, and there is a definite correlation between these toxins and our increased amount of weight gain. All of these heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, pesticides, herbicides, radioactive materials, all of these things affect the way our body metabolizes. Just in case you think that maybe you're pristine, the CDC did a study in 2001 and again in 2009. And they say that our Americans carry as our body burden, what our body can eliminate through normal processes, that our body burden is up from 27 to 212. And all of these toxins, the literature says that at least 85% of all cancers are caused by some kind of toxic insult to the body. We, of course, think mostly of things like cigarette smoke. But all kinds of industrial toxins are now contributing to cancer. And in places where they have no regulations involving toxins, I don't know if you remember back when they had the Olympics, a lot of the runners wouldn't even run in Beijing because the air quality was so bad they didn't want to be out there even breathing it. So they made them stop all the cars from coming in. There was no cars allowed in Beijing for a week before the Olympics so that they could clear the air enough so that the athletes could actually run. So in places where, and because automobile exhaust is one of the biggest sources of lead toxicity. So now in places like China where they don't have regulation, 1 in 5 deaths is actually due to cancer. And birth defects there are increased by 40%, which is really serious when you consider you only get one child. Serious birth defects are said to be as high as 1 in every 6 children there now. And it's all contributed to toxins in the environment. 10% of women worldwide carry mercury concentrations high enough to cause fetal damage. We're all drinking water now, and a lot of us are drinking them out of plastic bottles. Here's the ones that, if you turn over your bottle, look on the bottom, it will have a number. And these are considered the safest plastics. Number 1 is a very common one, and it has some antimony. It is a heavy metal. It can be neurotoxic, but if you only have a little of it, it's considered safe. But when you consider some people just drink out of plastic all day long, it could be contributory to some ill effects. 3 and 6 should be avoided. They have different kinds of toxic chemicals, and anything that has a number 7 will most likely contain bisphenol. We have toxins in our food. 49 states have advisories due to contamination by mercury, and pesticides have been found in our food. Right before Thanksgiving, you probably saw that there were a study that came out of Harvard University saying that people, by eating 1 can of soup daily for 5 days, increased their blood level of BPA by 1,000%. And bisphenol is a known carcinogen and is neurotoxic. But one of the main things it does is it mimics estrogen in the body. And remember, we talked about polycystic ovarian because you get too much estrogen. It promotes fat storage. It also contributes to early puberty. And these chemicals can actually mimic hormones in the body and cause weight gain. Because let's say that you have a chemical that binds on your thyroid and it blocks the receptor sites. Well, now your thyroid stimulating hormone thinks it's sluggish, so it starts overstimulating, trying to get your body, your thyroid, to create more thyroxine. Well, the same thing can happen on your receptor sites for estrogen. Your body thinks it's getting this estrogen, but the things estrogen is supposed to do in the body aren't working. So then the brain tells the body, make a lot more estrogen. And over time, you end up with high estrogen levels. And those high estrogen levels are believed to contribute to higher levels of breast cancer, higher levels of, say, polycystic ovarian, early puberty, and other issues. And we women, we just naturally store fat more than men. Men just tend to be leaner, and women tend to store fat. So that extra estrogen in women, but also extra estrogen in men. And it's contributing to obesity in men as well. This is another chemical that is given to cattle to help fatten them up. And it's an anabolic steroid, the kind of steroid that kind of like what weightlifters use. And it's 8 to 10 times more potent than testosterone. So it's, again, it's going to displace testosterone. The testosterone is not going to do what the body is naturally supposed to do with testosterone. And so the body is going to then start having the body produce more and more and more testosterone, trying to overcome the fact that the testosterone binding sites have been filled up with this toxin. I hope you're kind of getting this, because we could go through chemical after chemical, what mercury does, what lead does, what arsenic does, what all of these things displace healthy minerals or healthy hormones in the body and affect our normal metabolic processes. It also affects our skin care. Most of the ingredients in skincare have never been tested for safety, and the average person is exposed to 85 different chemicals daily on their skin due to our soaps, our skincare, our disinfectants, hand washes, and our cosmetic products. And you can go to cosmeticsdatabase.com and you can get all kinds of great information about skincare that is not as toxic. But this was what really opened my mind to this whole thing, because when I was in medical school, we learned absolutely nothing about toxins and what toxins do. And this was a study done with newborns in 10 American cities where they tested their umbilical cord blood at birth. They found over 200 different industrial chemical pollutants, pesticides, toxins in their blood. Every baby had Teflon, flame retardants, mercury, and pesticides. And many toxicologists in particular are believing that even before we're born, the toxins are affecting our receptor sites so that we are not even being born responding properly to things like our thyroid hormone, properly to insulin. So we're actually coming out already born with some degree of insulin resistance. And that's why we're seeing this massive amount of children with obesity and at even a very young age, is because their receptor sites are being interfered with because of these toxins, because of our dietary habits, because of our food additives, because of all of these factors that are then causing insulin resistance, causing excess insulin, causing excess glucagon, causing overproduction of the liver by glucose. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I hope you're catching this and you're having your eyes opened and you're seeing this picture. Because the reality is that if a newborn is toxic, what about you? You know, I've been eating, drinking, and breathing the air, and for 65 years now on planet Earth, and I know that I have had many, many toxic insults. We know that there are at least 85,000 chemicals that are being used industrially. Less than 10% have ever been tested for safety in humans. And on the EPA's list of the 7,000 most toxic, 71% were only created in the last 10 years. Go back and remember, how did we go from 10% obesity rate to 40% obesity rate? In fact, if you consider overweight in the United States, it's over 70% of us are overweight. How did that happen in 20 years? I believe this is it. I believe it is a byproduct of the chemical lifestyle, the food additives, the low-fat diets, the high sugar. I mean, it's just amazing. And there's a compelling association with this prenatal exposure and all kinds of neurotoxic effects, problems with things like autism, ADD, ADHD. All of this is so related. All of these conditions have been absolutely linked to toxic insults to the body. And here's how it affects our weight. When our body, what we call body burden, becomes more than what our body can eliminate through normal processes, our body stores those toxins in the most inert tissue that it can. And what is the most metabolically inactive tissues that we have? Our fat. And they actually have shown that fat cells that are harboring toxins have a chemical messenger around them that says, take me last. The body's made an effort to put those toxins there. They don't want to release them back into your bloodstream, back where they can do you some harm. So how can we go green on the inside? Well, one thing that is awesome is that our bodies are great at normal detoxification. Remember my example about the bisphenol A and how eating 5 days of soup increased the BPA levels to 1,000 times normal? Well, when the same people went 5 days without eating anything from a can, their blood level of BPA returned to normal. But how many people only eat 5 things from a can in their lifetime? People eat canned food on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, they're having the influence of these chemicals in their body. And when they're body burdened, when what you can't eliminate any longer from your sluggish liver, or because you've got so many things that you're putting on your skin, you can't eliminate it from your skin through your sweat. You aren't eliminating well from your kidneys. You're not eating enough fiber, and you're not eliminating well from your bowels. Then your body has to store these toxins, and then they have effects on our body. Now, we can help our bodies to detoxify beyond what our body naturally does. And I break these down into 2 forms. There's active and passive. And I think detoxification should be a part of every regimen for weight loss. Active detoxification helps the body doing what it already does, but more effectively. And passive detoxification removes the toxins from the body for you. Now, active methods are things like massage, doing lymphatic drainage, helping to move that lymph fluid so that our lymph can detoxify. Sometimes you refer to lymph fluid as the garbage dump of the body. You know, you get sick, your glands swell up with as your macrophages and killer T cells, and all of your immune fighters have gone and killed off that bacteria, that virus, or destroyed that cancer cell or whatever. It moves it into the lymph fluid, into the lymph tissue, and it kind of swell up temporarily, and then your body moves that stuff out and eliminates it. And massage can be very helpful, and using different kinds of essential oils has been shown to even be better. People have been going in sweat lodges and sweating out their toxins for as long as we have history. People have been using that. And now we have these fancy ways, like with infrared saunas, that you can go in, and it helps to actually break down the toxins in our fat with low-dose radiation, and it forces the sweat glands to sweat out the toxins. You wash it off, and that's a great way to detoxify. Most people, when you think of the word detox, the first thing that comes to mind for them is laxatives, colonics, colon cleanses. And those are, again, time-honored ways of clearing the bowel and keeping the bowel clean, and then putting back the healthy bacteria that you want, with the prebiotics, which are things that feed the probiotics, the healthy bacteria in your body. With acupuncture, acupressure is particularly good with people who are toxic because of their addictions, and are clearing those out. Algae and chlorella and spirulina are powerful detoxifiers. They combine with heavy metals. They form compounds that the body can more easily eliminate. Herbal, people think about, well, I'm going to take this, it's supposed to clean the blood, or it's supposed to purify the liver, or purify the kidneys, and those things help for detoxification. There are specific nutrients that can help the body to detoxify. Glutathione, there's been a lot of news about glutathione recently, and absolutely essential. And one of the things is that when you take Tylenol, Tylenol blocks the ability for glutathione to function in detoxifying the liver. And so a lot of times if you're going to, let's say you're going to get an immunization, they'll say, take some Tylenol. It'll help you not get a fever after you have it, and won't be a sore or whatever. But the Tylenol blocks the glutathione that's going to break down the what we call adjuncts, because it used to be that they put thimerosal, which is 50% mercury, in the immunizations. Now they put aluminum and formaldehyde as a preservative. And so kind of, pick your poison. Either, if your body can't detoxify well, it's not going to do any better getting the aluminum out than it could getting the mercury out, and it's actually going to be interfered with if you take Tylenol and you block the glutathione pathway, because that's one of the major ways your body eliminates these heavy metals and these toxins. So you don't want to take something that's going to make your liver sluggish. So if you do need something for pain, you would want to use something like a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, something like Motrin or Aleve or something like that, that works in the kidneys, is metabolized by the kidneys and not by the liver, and doesn't block glutathione function. So, so all of these nutrients can all help, and of course we want to eat our foods as recently alive as possible, because when we cook our food, we kill off our enzymes, and enzymes are the catalyst for all our metabolic processes, including detoxification. Antioxidants are powerful. They get rid of the free radicals, which are the most significant reason why we age, is because of the oxidation that becomes, the older we get, the more oxidation that goes on in our body, and this is a toxic process. So, and also dehydration. We need to drink plenty of water. We need to be eliminating well, and that being dehydrated isn't going to help you to detoxify. And then, of course, diet. It's not the food in your life that matters. It's the life in your food, trying to eat foods that have been recently alive, full of enzymes, and still have all their flavonoids and other things that are going to be helpful. Organic food, you don't have to take out what you don't put in. So food, and particularly food that is food with fat, because just like we store our toxins in our fat, so do animals. So some of the foods that I think are important is you should try to eat organic meat, organic butter, because you want your animal fats to be as free of toxins as possible. And then fasting, people have been fasting for a long, long time. In fact, that's probably how those babies got pesticides that had been banned 3 generations ago in their umbilical cord blood at birth in 2005. It was because their mothers were fasting, and they were breaking down toxins, and they broke down toxins when they were giving birth and passed them to their daughters, and then they passed on toxins because they were fasting at delivery, and they passed them on to their daughters, and that's how it gets passed down through fasting. So if you're going to fast, of course, you do want to be drinking plenty of water so that you can eliminate the things that are being broken down when you fast. All of these methods can be very beneficial. They all aid the body in detoxifying better, but they do require knowledge and discipline to be safe and effective. Now, my favorite passive ways are through some minerals called zeolites. The favorite one is clinoptilolite. There's over 40 kinds of zeolites. Clinoptilolite is formed when volcanic ash meets seawater. It has been evaluated by the FDA and has GRAS status. It's recognized as safe. It has over 800 years of documented use in humans and has been used commercially for over 50 years. Numerous studies on the safety of clinoptilolite. It works as a toxin trap. It has a 3-dimensional cage-like structure with a negative charge that traps environmental pollutants, heavy metals, allergens, viral particles, and even radioactive particles in the cage-like structure and eliminates it for you. So this is just an example of how clinoptilolite could improve your cellular function. In every cell in your body, you have a molecule called adenosine triphosphate. Right here are 3 little phosphates, and right here is supposed to be bound magnesium. And at this binding site, whenever energy needs to be created, this is supposed to release, and this phosphate flies and energy is created. Kind of like holding a bow and arrow, and you're holding the bow and arrow and nothing is happening until you let go, and then the arrow flies and the energy is created. The arrow accomplishes its goal and goes where it was intended. And so in our body, this molecule is the energy currency of our body. This is how we make energy. Well, magnesium is supposed to be here at this binding site. But what can happen is that mercury likes to displace magnesium in the body. And if mercury is here, it makes a tight bond instead of a loose bond. So it doesn't like to let go. But if you take this clinoctillolite, the little cage-like structure comes, removes the mercury from the binding site, magnesium now can come and create the proper bond. Now you can release this phosphate, and now you can create energy. You create energy, you can work out better. You feel more like exercising. You feel more like making better choices with your diet. Now, when you are purchasing a clinoctillolite product, you want to purchase one that's purified, because these minerals are naturally occurring and they have attracted toxins. So you want to get one that's been processed, that's been purified, one that's been micronized so that they can get into the bloodstream and work at the cellular level and activated. Maybe add some calcium or something to start the process of exchange of the heavy metals or toxins with the naturally occurring minerals within the molecule. So what studies have shown is with the clinoctillolite, within the first weeks of use, you will be detoxifying at a level of 5 to 15 times normal. It requires no lifestyle change or special diet. A detoxification syndrome is very rare. When you use active methods, you are releasing those toxins back into your bloodstream, out of your fat cells, out of your bones, off your receptor site, and out of your cells. And so then it can sometimes make you feel pretty puny. And then you've got to depend on your liver, your kidneys, your bowels, and your skin to finish the detoxification. With this, it's actually trapped in the cage and eliminated for you. And it's completely safe for use for people of all ages, children, the elderly, pets. It's even recommended for pregnant and nursing mothers, so that moms can now eat fish, not worry about the mercury, because the mercury will get captured by the cage and eliminated. I don't encourage any active methods during pregnancy or breastfeeding, because we want to keep those toxins stored. We don't want them out where they can get into the breast milk or can pass across the placenta and get into the baby. Fetuses don't have the ability to detoxify their bodies until their livers are not mature enough to function until their 9th month of gestation. And heavy metals and toxins have a high affinity for brain and neurological tissue in the fetus. So keeping these toxins away from the baby is going to be extremely, extremely beneficial. So we don't want to actively release those toxins. We want to passively capture and remove them. And they've been using this for so long. They used raw clinoctillolite back when they had the Chernobyl disaster, and they were able to clear radiation from the people in just a matter of a few days. So these purified micronized clinoctillolite products, and there's many, many of them out there, are going to be much more powerful as a chelator than raw zeolite, because of its purification process and the empty cages that can absorb yours. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about nutritional supplements, and then we'll be done. Our 5 keys, remember, we're reducing our stress, exercising more, having a healthy weight with a healthy, abundant diet of good, nutritious foods, detoxifying our bodies so that our fat cells can break down those toxins and eliminate those fat cells, empty those fat cells out, and so they can be flat instead of fluffy and plump. And then we need to make sure that we're eating the right nutrition. If your vitamin supplement doesn't seem to be effective for you, it may be that the potency isn't good, and you want to always get a product that has been manufactured with good manufacturing practices. It should say CGMP on the product, that it has a guarantee. There's been quite a lot of controversy over synthetic versus food-based products. Hands down, the food-based products win versus putting just, you make this vitamin in a lab and that vitamin in a lab and that vitamin you stick them in a pill, and they don't work synergistically. They don't have a lot of the enzymes and the other things to make them work. The concentrated food-based and nutritional supplements are going to be better. And the AMA actually recommends everyone needs to take a vitamin and mineral supplement. The ones that are the most efficient for most people are vitamin D. A lot of people who have weight issues take statin drugs for their cholesterol. When you do that, you block your body's ability to make one of the most important enzymes that our muscles need for functioning. And remember, the heart is one of our most important muscles. So if you're on a statin drug, you want to be taking either CoQ10 or some people call it CoQ10, but CoQ10, which then in the body turns into ubiquinol, and you can purchase either one. You can purchase CoQ10 or ubiquinol from multiple sources, go to health food store, whatever. Many companies make excellent ubiquinol products and CoQ10 products. But if you're on a statin drug, you need about 200 milligrams. If you're not on a statin drug, it's still good to take about 100 milligrams of these products, just because they help make us healthier. And there's some new research showing that it can even have some protective effects against certain kinds of cancers. Vitamin D, of course, people are so deficient. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is that you only can get, here in Oklahoma, it depends on how close you are to the equator and so forth, but here in Oklahoma, where we live, you only can get adequate vitamin D from the sun from mid-September to mid-April. So absolutely in the winter, you should be taking a vitamin D supplement. Very important for pregnant women, very important for protection from certain kinds of cancers. And we do a lot of checking of vitamin D levels at our clinic, and it is extremely rare that we find someone with a recommended 40 to 50 level of their vitamin D. A B complex, a good food-based B complex, is absolutely essential for your body to break down fat. You cannot break down fat without B complex vitamins. So you definitely want to have those on board. Our essential fatty acids, and the ones you hear the most are the EPA and the DHA. These are your omega-3 fatty acids, and some of these, your arachidonic acid, linoleic acid, or some of your omega-6s. Like I said, you need them in a balanced form. And essential fatty acids, very, very critical. And if you don't have enough fat in your body will make its own fat. Animals make saturated fat. Plants make unsaturated fat. Do we want to be saturated with fat? No. So we don't want to want the saturated fat. That's the bad fat. And so we're animals, so if we don't eat enough fat and we make our own, guess what kind we make? We make the bad fat. So you want to fill your body with the good fat so that your body doesn't have to make its own, and it can have the functioning of the good fat. But if you want to not guess about what supplements you might need, test. Spectra Cell Labs, we have this at our clinic, and if you want to know where a clinic is near you, the number, or go to their website, and they will find you where there are practitioners who do these tests. And I love this test. It's called the micronutrient test. And what it does is it tests at the cellular level what your level of nutrients are. Your B vitamins, your vitamin A, your vitamin D, your CoQ10, your antioxidants, your amino acids. It will tell you what you're missing. It will confirm for you that the nutritional supplements you are taking are working, or it will show you that maybe all that money you're spending on those vitamins isn't doing you any good. And it will help you to target the specific nutrients that your body needs. They also have an amazing advanced cardiovascular test called the lipoprotein particle profile. Because in general, people go, they find out they've got high cholesterol, they get put on a statin drug. Well, it depends what kind of particles, lipoprotein particles you have. And some of them aren't even going to respond to statin drugs. So you're taking a drug you don't even need and isn't even going to work in your body because you don't know what kind of particles, whether you have the small, dense particles or the light, fluffy, big particles. And you need to learn this. And this advanced cardiovascular testing that Spectra Cell Labs does is almost always paid for by your insurance. And it is covered under Medicare for everyone. So the next year when you go in to get your testing and you want to get your cholesterol and your HDL and your LDL, instead ask for this specific test. It is going to tell you way, way more. Plus it adds in it a fasting insulin level, homocysteine levels, C-reactive protein levels, which test inflammation in your cardiovascular system. It's a fabulous test, and it's almost always paid for by your insurance. Now, the micronutrient testing is not usually paid by your insurance, but the cost on it is still very reasonable. So don't guess about your nutritional status. Get tested. I cannot talk enough about the value of fiber supplements for dieters. You really need to take fiber. You can get it in liquids, drinks, pills, all kinds of ways to get your fiber. But ideally, you want something that's going to have a balance of insoluble fiber, which cleans the colon, soluble fiber, which heals the colon, and can bind up with fat like those drugs can, with less GI side effects, and will also help to lower your cholesterol. And plant sterols. In the American Heart Association stepwise approach, you're supposed to lower your cholesterol by first changing diet for your diet and exercise, then taking plant sterols, then taking statin drugs. Well, how many people do that? They go from diet to statin. And because most people don't even know where to get plant sterols. But if you go to your health food store, or also there's other people who are distributors in various companies that make these excellent nutritional products, you can get these plant sterols, and they're proven to lower cholesterol 20%. So let's say that your cholesterol is 220. Well, you lower it 20%, that's 44 points. That gets you way down in the normal level. So, so something that has a combination of insoluble, soluble plant sterols is excellent. Also, inulin is the most commonly used prebiotic, and when they mix that with fiber products, it helps to reduce the amount of gas and GI upset because it helps with encouraging the growth of healthy bacteria. And probiotics, you know, you've always heard the saying, you are what you eat. Well, you also might be that you are what your bacteria and fungus in your colon eat. And when you have unhealthy bacteria in your colon, it can actually combine with sugar and make alcohol, make you feel high. It can affect your cravings. If you have a lot of yeast in your body, you're more likely to crave. You know, if you bake bread, you You know, you put warm water and you put the yeast in there and it just lays there. And then you put that little spoonful of sugar and all of a sudden you've got this thing bubbling up out of the bowl. Well, you know, if you have some fungus and you don't eat much sugar, it's not going to be too much of a problem. But you eat a lot of sugar, that fungus is going to blow up in you and going to have a party and reproduce, and pretty soon you're going to have a yeast infection. So, and these funguses and these bacteria actually encourage you to crave these things that they want to eat. So eating cultured dairy products, those are things that have the healthy bacteria in them that are going to be good for your colon. And then when you go to like a health food store to buy a probiotic, you need one that has billions per dose, because it's got to survive the acidity of your stomach and get into your colon where you need it. So a lot of them that you'll see, you know, may have a few thousand, and it's just really not, they're going to be worthless. They're not going to do you any good. You've got to have one that has at least billions of bacteria per dose. Eating 30 grams a day of dietary fiber has been shown to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, and cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of diabetics. People don't, unless they die usually of low blood sugar, more often than not, they die from their diabetes due to either sepsis, because they kick out so many ketones, they change the, and glucose itself, or their glucose is either so high or so low that it changes the pH, and they get a blood-borne infection and die of sepsis, or they die from some kind of problem from cardiovascular disease. So dietary fiber is just really, really, really critical. And in addition to all these other good things, it also reduces your risk of colon cancer. So I just can't tell you how important fiber is for you. And also I want you to make stevia your sweetener of choice, and stop all these other forms of artificial sweeteners. And also they've got some of the synthetic stevias out there now. You want to go for the pure herb in either powder or liquid. And you've got to kick the soda pop habit. And most of us really love those bubbles, and we get addicted to them, but you actually can find soda pop sweetened with stevia. They're expensive, which is good, because then you won't drink very many of them. But while you're kicking the habit, here's some ways to transition. Get some naturally carbonated mineral water, like Perrier or a knockoff brand of Perrier. And to that, you can add fresh squeezed lemon, lime. You can add a few ounces, no more than 2, of your favorite fresh. Fresh squeeze is even better. Fruit juice, grapes, orange, or even prune juice. Or just try plain water. Find herbal teas that you like. Drink those hot or cold. Hot drinks are amazing. At night, if you're just getting that, oh, I just want a little something, have yourself a hot cup of tea before you go to bed. You can choose one that can even help you to relax and sleep better. And hot drinks really help if it's not appropriate. If you haven't eaten in 4 hours and it's not bedtime, eat something. It's all right to eat. If it's appropriately to eat, time to eat. If it's not, a hot drink will often tie you over. And as silly as it sounds, drink with a straw. Lots of people find out that what they love the most about soda pop is the straw. And just drinking plain water with a straw sometimes can be just plain ice water, and it also costs less. They'll give you free ice water with a straw almost anywhere you go when you drive through the fast food place. So my summary is eat real food. If nature made it, eat it. But if man made it, please watch out. It's going to contain chemicals. It's going to contain things that your body does not need and may not know what to do with. Make friends with food. You can't just say no to food. You have to learn to eat and to love to eat, but to eat the right things. It's the choices that you make. You can't say no, So you have to learn to make wise choices. And then love your body enough to feed it what it needs, not necessarily what it wants. So I hope that I've helped you to create a vision today of a new and healthier you, help you believe that it would really be worth it if you were to get to your normal weight, or at least do the things that will reduce insulin resistance, and to help you to create a plan that's uniquely for you. We didn't tell you what foods to eat. I don't know if you like broccoli or asparagus. I just know you need to eat a green vegetable, and I don't care what you eat. You can find something that you can eat that you will like. But it's eating the choices of foods and understanding how these foods do to your body. I hope will have given you enough tools that you can become successful in your weight management issue. And don't forget, I hope you've written down at least 3 things that you have learned tonight. And then I want you to think of one of those that you're going to implement this week, and you're going to make that small step journey on your way to better health. Because if you do, it will happen. If you'd like to contact me, here's my phone number, and here's my email address if you'd like to write me, and if you'd like to get that information handout that I said I would send to you, you can contact me. And so I guess I'm going to open it up to questions now. Opening up so I can see what we've got here. Somebody asked why there wasn't any video. I don't have on my computer the way something Dr. David and I haven't been able to figure out how to make it work video, but we're working on it, and I hope to do that soon. Here's someone asked about if they take omega-3 fatty acids, it makes them feel nauseated. Any ideas to get around that? Is plant-based easier on the stomach than fish-based? I think that's probably can be, a lot of people find that the fish oil products do make them have nausea, and sometimes they burp them. I can tell you that I've tried a lot of them, and you just have to keep trying until you find a product that works well for you. Sometimes the ubiquinol products are easier than actually, well, that's a CoQ10, but it actually works kind of like a fatty acid and does a lot of the same things. But yes, I'm a big fan of chia seed. Chia is the highest source of omega-3 fatty acid in a non-animal source. Some people take krill oil, and they think that's easier on their stomach. I think it's just a matter of, do take it with food, and just shop around till you can find one that works well for you. I've recently been taking one that comes from a company called RX, and I've been real happy with it. It hasn't caused any problems for me. Oh gosh, it says the audio's not good, can't hear me. Oh gosh, I hope that hasn't been true. Why would a thin person get diabetes too? Because thin people can get insulin resistance, but also I found that a lot of thin people have had some kind of toxic insult that's happened to their liver, to their pancreas. I've seen women who've had significant blood loss during their delivery, and this has caused a lack of blood supply to get to their pancreas, and I've seen them even become type 1 diabetics after a difficult delivery. I've seen that in several patients, and they were very thin women, but they had so much blood loss. So some kind of trauma to the body can do it. Sometimes viruses can do it. but usually it's going to be that they've become, it's not necessarily an issue of insulin resistance creating the type 2 diabetes, but it's more that they're just have had something that has actually damaged and caused a reduction in the functioning. So they're kind of like an adult type 1. But of course, type 1 is when you really have no functioning at all. So they still have some functioning, but it's impaired. This person says, please repeat, when the fasting glucose level is abnormal, you will have already lost 40 to 50% of what? Of the functioning of the beta cells in the pancreas. If it hasn't gone on too long and you're able to take off some of the stress, you may regenerate some of that, but you'll probably always be suffering from inadequate functioning of the pancreas. But like I said, you know, maybe your pancreas can function at 50% if you're normal weight, or you have very little problem as long as you don't overeat sugars and things that are too many carbohydrates that are over challenging your pancreas. You might do well, but if you're really, really heavy and your body needs a lot more insulin to function, then it's not going to be adequate amount of functioning. And so this is why I do these presentations, is that I want people back when they're getting hypoglycemic because they're hyperinsulinemic and they haven't even developed any insulin resistance. That's when I want to catch them. I want to catch the people who come in and their fasting glucose is 80 and their 1 hour postprandial, after we give them like 75 grams of glucose to drink, and at 1 hour their blood sugar is 180, and at 2 hours their blood sugar is 60. I mean, they're shooting their sugar up and they are crashing their sugar down. And so they haven't developed insulin resistance yet, but they have too much insulin circulating in their blood, and so their pancreas over time is going to wear out. And I want to catch them right then. And then if I don't catch them then, I want to catch them when their fasting blood sugar is 80 and their 1 hour is 120 and their 2 hour is 180. That's, you know, and they're now developing insulin resistance. So having a glucose tolerance test, you know, is just generally considered the gold standard, and I love to do it because it really, you can sit down and you can look at the figures and you can see what your body's doing with the way it's handling sugar after a big sugar load, and you know what carbohydrates are doing for you. Next question is, if a glucose level of 120 or higher is considered diabetic, why do you recommend to keep your glucose levels under 180? Now that's under 180 eating. You know, fasting, you want to keep your blood sugar in the normal range if possible, but you know, ideally somewhere between 120 and 130 fasting, and no higher than 180 after eating would be really good control and isn't going to, you know, really cause much damage to the body at all. Over 180 is when you start really damaging the blood vessels, and that's when you start getting into the microvascular and macrovascular disease issues. Someone asked about, is Advocare program a good one nutritionally or otherwise? I really don't know enough about Advocare. I know you take a lot of pills when you take it. That's the only thing I know. I really don't know enough to say. I know a lot of people take that program and really, really like it. Do skin tags always suggest too much insulin? Not always. Some people just have a familial or genetic predisposition to have a lot of skin tags, but for the most part, when you, if you're getting a lot of skin tags, and especially if you got skin tags and acanthosis, nigricans, and you got that little velvety skin, sometimes under the arms, sometimes like on the inner thighs and the creases of the legs, you'll see the darkening and a kind of a velvety appearance. You're hyperinsulinemic. You got too much insulin. Don't you want to differentiate between white bread and white rice and dark bread and brown rice? Yes, absolutely. And I hope I did say that. In that, white bread is going to turn to sugar quickly. It's going to stimulate a lot of insulin. It doesn't have any fiber. It's going to break down fast. It's going to turn to glucose really fast. It's going to stimulate a lot of insulin, and it's going to shoot your blood sugar up, and it's going to predispose you to all kinds of blood sugar abnormalities. White rice, the same. They've taken all the bran out. They've taken all the good stuff out. But then if you have the high fiber whole grain bread, it's going to take a lot longer to break down. Brown rice has still got the fiber and the bran in the rice. It's going to take a lot longer to break down. And in moderation, excellent foods. Excellent foods. You just need to limit them while you're losing weight, and then you can add more servings of the high glycemic carbs after you've lost your weight. Then you can always back off on them if you start gaining again. But what do I think about phentermine and Topamax to assist with weight loss? Phentermine or phentermine, I do use those with some people. They're metabolic boosters. They help suppress the appetite. Sometimes I'll have people take a whole one in the morning, or sometimes I'll have them, if they're getting really hungry at night, I'll have them take a half in the morning and a half at night. If you drink it with 2 glasses of water in your first 2 hours after you take it, it virtually eliminates any side effects or jitteriness or dry mouth or any of that. So I always tell people, take your phentermine with about 8 ounces of water, and then over the next hour drink another 8 ounces of water. And that pretty much eliminates any of the negative side effects from it. But for a lot of people, it's just the boost that they need to help them. Do we keep them on it forever? No. And in fact, if people aren't being compliant on their diets, they won't lose weight even taking the phentermine. So if they're not continuing to lose weight all the time and continuing to feel that it is helping, we don't use it. Now the Topamax, I mean, that's such a completely different mechanism. A lot of people, of course, they take it because for seizures, they take it for headache prophylaxis, and it does cause weight loss. I personally have never used it for the purpose of weight loss. So I think there might be people who do, but I don't. How do I feel about gastric bypass surgery? Well, when I was studying this, one thing I read was that people who get, this is a little off the subject, but liposuction, people ask about that people who get liposuction, they look thinner, but they're not any healthier. It doesn't lower their cholesterol, it doesn't lower their triglycerides, it doesn't improve their cardiovascular status, it doesn't lower their blood pressure usually. It doesn't do any of the things that, I mean it's trite, but people say, oh, you're so beautiful, if you just lose weight, you'd be even prettier. I just don't see weight as about beauty. I think people can be beautiful at any weight. And I don't want people to think they have to look a certain way or have a certain body type to look beautiful. But I want people to lose weight because I want them to be healthier. I want them to be more active. I want them to be able to feel better and not be sick as often, and live longer and do what they came to planet Earth to do. And a lot of times weight issues greatly interfere with that. So for me, weight loss is all about health. It's not about beauty. So if you're going to do liposuction just so you can look better, but it's not going to make you healthier, I don't think that's a very good thing to do. And gastric bypass surgery, I've seen people who, before they get gastric bypass surgery, they have them eat 1 tablespoon of food an hour, and they have to prove that they can be disciplined enough to do that, because in the beginning that's all the food their stomach's going to be able to hold, and so they have to show and prove that they can eat 1 tablespoon of food an hour. Well, if you can eat 1 tablespoon of food an hour, you're going to lose weight and you don't need the surgery. So the surgery makes you do what you could do if you could discipline yourself to do the right things. So I'm not opposed to gastric bypass surgery, and I know for many people, and remember, when your BMI gets greater than 40, your body starts producing extra fat cells, and no doubt obesity is a killer, and it shortens our life, and obesity is tragic for your health. So if that's what you need to do to lose weight and get your weight down, then go for it. They've got it down now, so it's really, really very safe. I worry about your nutritional status being compromised afterwards because of food limitations. I highly recommend that you find a good liquid vitamin that you take so that you're keeping your nutritional status, and because you have a hard time with pills, so you're going to need to find ways to get your nutrition through liquids. And so I hope that's helpful. That's just my personal opinion about gastric bypass that you asked, so I'm telling you my personal opinion. Somebody says there's research that the low glycemic index diets are more effective for blood sugar management than the glycemic load index, which is suggested by some. And I think that's pretty much what I talked about in my presentation. I just really have seen, it's not uncommon for people who do the diet that I've recommended to say it's the easiest diet that they've been on. They eat more food than they ate before. They're never hungry. They feel good, and they lose 40 to 60 pounds in about 6 months. That's the kind of, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and I have extremely good results with people who will be effective, who will do it. And you get your accountability partner. You set your plan and you work your plan, and you do very, very well. So, and what I love about the low glycemic index diet is that you can live on it forever. And you can add a few extra things when you're at your normal diet, and you can eat everything. One of the little things that I tell people to do is when you're going to go to a party, and you know you're going to blow it, especially if it's potluck, the first thing you do when you get there is you go to the dessert table. Now, all day long, you have not eaten any carbs before you get there, because you know you're going to eat some carbs, because you're just going to. So you just accept that as reality. And the first thing you do when you get there is you go to the dessert table, and you get to choose 3 bites. You can eat 3 bites of one thing, or you can eat 3 bites of 3 things, or 6 bites of half a bite each. And and you put those things on your plate. Then you go to the potluck or whatever, and you eat. Because if you don't do that, what happens is you go through the line, you've sworn you're going to be good, you eat you eat this stuff, but you still overeat, and then at the end, you go, well, I overate anyway, I might as well go eat the dessert, and then you go eat the whole piece of cheesecake. And and now you have completely blown your diet. And so just as you go through the line, just pick out all the stuff that's low glycemic and let your high glycemic food that day be your 3 bites. You know, it's going to be fine. You're going to be all right. Some people say, can I have a glass of wine? You can. It's one of your 2 high glycemic foods. That's all. If you want to exchange a piece of bread for wine, a glass of wine, you can do that. But you can't do it every meal, and you can't have toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pizza for dinner, and wine. It's just too many carbs. Does everything you've spoken of tonight apply to type 1 diabetics as well? Yes, although you have to really, really watch, you know, for the hypoglycemia. Type 1 diabetics, you know, have a much higher problem, and you lose that sensitivity to feel what it feels like to become low glycemic, to become hypoglycemic. And but I think yes, because if you're eating 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, you should, and you're spreading your calories out throughout the day, and you're not overeating on your carbs, but you are eating some carbs. You probably can eat more carbs because we don't want you to produce ketones. But you're still going to have to keep your overall calorie count, you know, within normal. So I guess the answer is yes. Yes, I think you can apply most of the things that I've said to type 1 diabetics. Did you say to talk to your physician about supplements? But what training do they have around this topic? And I'm going to tell you honestly, they have very little. Now, I'd like to think that they're learning more. Many of the major medical schools are now putting actually departments of complementary and alternative medicine, and they are beginning to train medical students in this. And this is going to be so much better for all of us because if we can, as much as possible, let food be our medicine, that is going to be the best thing that we can do. And most of the chronic diseases that people die from are related to lifestyle issues, and so physicians are getting more and more and more training. But when I went to PA school, and this was 20 years ago, but when I went to PA school, the training on nutrition as a PA, we had to have classes before we got to PA school, and then we had nutrition classes both semesters of our didactic year before we went into our clinicals. And so we actually got quite a bit of training in nutrition. And then it's always been a passion of mine, so I just kind of learned about it on the side, and have always, you know, cared about it and raising my children and so forth. But the physicians, their training was that they had to write down everything they ate for a week, and then they had to put it on a computer program that analyzed their diet for vitamins, minerals, protein, carbohydrate, calories. And it was a learning experience as to, and it would say your diet was adequate or your diet was inadequate. That was it. Now, maybe before they got to medical school, they took some nutrition classes, but in medical school, that was it. And, you know, that is woefully deficient. And I'd like to think that it is better now, but I really don't know. The thing that's hard about it is because of the way our system is set up with lawyers being so involved in all of this, what has happened is they've developed what they call standard of care. And so if you come to me and I tell you to do something that is not considered standard of care and you have a bad outcome and you sue me and we go to court, all their lawyer has to say is, you told that person to take fiber instead of a statin drug when statin drugs are standard of care? Yes, I did. You just lost the lawsuit because you did not do standard of care. You may have done better care. You may have done overall better. It may have been more beneficial for that patient or for the majority of patients, but maybe in that one patient it wasn't a good thing, and because it wasn't standard of care, now your career is destroyed. And so most medical providers, particularly physicians, they spend a lot of money going to medical school, they've spent a lot of money setting up their practices, and they're not going to risk it by telling you to go and do something that's not standard of care. So, when you go to talk to your physician and you say, do this, I tell people now, they're probably going to tell you, don't do it. But you can certainly talk to them anyway. But I think if people will just, I know the internet's confusing and there's a lot of wacko stuff on there and a lot of stuff is not true. But if you can learn about the basic principles and the basic physiology of how our body is functioning, which is what I try to do in this class tonight, then you're gonna hear something and it's gonna be like, I don't think that's right, or I think I can research that a little bit. I've got the basic knowledge to figure that out and figure out whether that actually is viable and something I should consider doing. And there's starting to be more and more alternative practitioners who can really help you. Another rule I always say is just, what's the old saying? If you smell a rat, follow the droppings to the money. And does a person have the ability to make a lot of money off of you if you do their option? And that could be true for, if you're a surgeon and somebody comes in and you ask them, should I have surgery, and that's the surgery they do, follow the trail to the money. If they tell you, no, you don't have to do the surgery, go do physical therapy or go to a chiropractor, we can probably at least try acupuncture first. They're not going to do that because they're surgeons. They do surgery. That's what they get paid to do. And they don't get paid to send you to the acupuncturist or the chiropractor. So it's, medicine's really in a mess right now. And the more we can all cooperate and work together, the better it's going to be for the patient. So anyway, that's my thought. Can I get the copies of various prescriptions? Yes. Just anything that you saw, I would be more than happy to send to you. Just write me at toxinclear@gmail.com and I will send you the information. Somebody says, I'm overwhelmed. I didn't think it would go on this long. I have no idea what time it is. I don't even have a clock, so it probably is way past everybody's bedtime. It's a good way to get alkaline water aside from purchasing a $4,000 machine. Actually, you can put a little baking soda in your water and you can alkaline it. Drinking alkaline water a little bit is probably good for you, probably beneficial. Drinking it exclusively isn't, I don't think, is good at all, because it's just as bad to be too alkaline as it is to be too acidic. And our body has all these amazing mechanisms to keep our pH normal, but we want to cooperate with that. We don't want to fight against it. And so I'm not a particular fan of spending that much money for alkaline water. although maybe a couple glasses a day wouldn't hurt you. But drinking it exclusively, I don't think is probably a good thing. That's just my opinion. Will fiber help with removal of toxins if doing the active detox? Absolutely. Fiber is fabulous for detoxing. Yes, you bet. Is it okay to use xylitol as a sweetener? There's certain kinds of sweeteners that are made of xylitol. This is my understanding, and I have a limited knowledge about this. But my understanding is there's certain xylitols that are not good for you, and there's certain kinds of xylitols that are perfectly fine as a sweetener. How you distinguish the two, I'm not sure, but I guess just the source that you're getting it from, I would maybe talk to somebody at a very knowledgeable person at your health food store, or someone who sells xylitol who can give you the scientific reasons why theirs is good one. Because I know some of it can be very good, and some of it can be not. So you just have to find the good one. Surprised to hear you drink carbonated beverages. I've heard to avoid carbonated anything. Yeah, I agree. I don't drink carbonated anything myself at all. That was a transitional thing, because for people to go cold turkey away from their bubbles is really, really hard. It's just like coming off anything. They have to have a little period of adjustment to come off those carbonated drinks. And the naturally carbonated mineral waters, the natural spring waters, are full of a lot of minerals, and they're pretty balanced. They're not so high in the phosphate. One of the reasons soda pop is so bad for you is because it's so high in phosphate, that your body then has to phosphorus and calcium, do a little electrolyte dance in your body, and when you get too much phosphate, your body has to find a calcium source, and often it's going to take it out of your bones. And so a lot of carbonated drinking beverages can actually increase your risk for osteoporosis. And just those high levels of phosphorus, you just don't need it in the body. You need some phosphorus, but you don't need that high phosphorus. So, but some of the naturally carbonated are such high mineral waters, the phosphorus level is acceptable and really isn't going to imbalance your calcium. And so as a transitional beverage, while you're getting off the bubbles, I think it can be a good thing to try. If you want something sweet, you can add a little stevia to it even. But just like a little lemon or lime, I don't think is, and it can occasionally be a little treat, and it's certainly better than soda pop. That's for sure. I won't even let my guy who I get my investments with, I won't let him buy anything that comes from any of the companies that make soda pop. When you don't get stocked with Coca-Cola, you just hardly can get stock in anything. So they're just pretty much diversified into everything, the Coca-Cola company. In fact, I saw an interesting graph the other day. Beyond Organic is a brand new company that has natural organic beef and probiotic infused everything and wonderful cultured products. But they have a magazine, and it had a listing of all the companies that have bought up the entire organic food industry. And Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, they all own a lot of these companies that most of us, go to natural food stores and buy. I think we're getting something good, and we may still be getting something good. We're certainly getting something better. But it's astonishing. Heinz owns a huge amount of it. It makes Heinz ketchup and things like that. Okay. Got lots of kudos. Thanks. Great presentation. Learned a lot. Yay. Good. Hope so. Oh, what do you think about HCG to achieve weight loss? I'll tell you, I think that they're going to really find out this was not a good idea. I have a very limited knowledge. I read the book on it just to, and my take on it is that when you're When you're starving yourself, your body is going to break down lean muscle first, except when you're pregnant. When you're pregnant, your body wants to conserve that lean body tissue because it knows you've got a lot to go through being pregnant, and so it will preferentially burn fat instead of taking lean body tissue. So you go on this, of course, incredibly low calorie diet, 500 calories, and you take the HCG. So your body thinks you're a starving pregnant woman, so your body will go and burn fat. I don't know. I don't like the idea of putting HCG in men because HCG stimulates estrogen and progesterone in the body, and so I don't know. I'm not a fan, and also it can't be lifestyle, and also every single person I've seen who lost weight on HCG regained it as soon as they got off of it. So, you know, anything can't be lifestyle, I'm just not a big fan. And I know that, you know, it's just, you hear so much controversy. It's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. Anything with that much controversy, I try to stay clear of it. Yeah, if you have a source list for supplement companies that you use. Yeah, I have right now about 8 or 9 companies that I buy products from and that I use with my patients. So I will be glad to send you a list if you'll write me at toxinclear@gmail.com. A good digestive enzyme will help that situation. Oh, I guess he means with the person with the fish oil. I bet you that's absolutely right. It'll help from burping the fish oil. Yes, good digestive enzymes, absolutely. I'm big on digestive enzymes. Use a lot of them. Wonderful, good stuff. Probiotics, digestive enzymes, you bet. Let's see. Here's a question. What degradation occurs to foods in the process of home cooking? Well, according to the raw food people, whenever you heat your food over 106 degrees, you just destroy most of the enzymes. Like I said, when I was talking about the dark chocolate, 95% of the epicatechins, which are the benefits that you get from all these great flavonoids, you lose 95% when you heat the chocolate. So cooking food under low heat is, or you know, the lower the heat, the better it's going to be, the more nutritious it's going to be. I just think food that cooks at home, no matter what you're cooking, is going to be better. You're less likely to add food additives to it. It's less likely to have bad stuff in it. So anyway, I know it's kind of an incomplete answer, but I hope that helped. What's the difference between the fiber terms, dietary versus non-dietary, and soluble versus insoluble? Okay, I'm not sure dietary, non-dietary. I don't know what that means. Soluble versus insoluble. Soluble fiber, insoluble fiber are things like psyllium husks and wheat bran, and that means that it just goes through, it doesn't digest at all. It just passes through unchanged. You might say corn is an insoluble fiber. It kind of passes through. It comes in one end and out the other. Anybody who's changed the diaper on a 2-year-old knows. Just passes through. So that would be insoluble fiber. It just doesn't digest. Really, it just passes through. So it bulks up the stool. It helps things move along, and it's good. It's good because it helps us be regular folks. But soluble fiber, a lot of those are like carrot fiber, and oh gosh, I'd have to go look on a fiber box, and but they're fibers that come from all kinds of different plants and herbs and different things. And they actually have a healing, they clean, they're kind of like solubles, kind of like using your rough sandpaper, and then when you're ready, when you're refinishing something, you get your fine sandpaper so that you can make it really smooth and nice. And the soluble fiber is kind of like that. It kind of cleans the colon and makes it a happy place for the healthy bacteria to grow, and it has a healing effect. It's very good for people who have things like ulcerative colitis and things like that. Soluble fiber is going to be very healing for them. So, one makes you go, and one kind of heals and helps the colon. And you need both kinds of fiber. How long does BPA stay in the body? Well, evidently not very long if you've got really good detox ability, because in that study, in 5 days, the BPA increased by 1,000%. In 5 days off of it, it decreased. It went back down to the pre-level, so it cleared that out. BPA is put on the lining of cans to keep them from rusting. That's their purpose. Do you do a 3 or a 5 hour glucose test? I usually only do a 3 unless I am suspicioning low blood sugar, but very rarely do we make it to the 5 hours, because if I think they got low blood sugar, they usually got low blood sugar way before we get to the 5 hours, and I'm not going to push somebody and make them pass out just so I can find out what their blood sugar levels are. So, we may go with a 5 hour in mind, but usually you can learn everything you want to know in a 3 hour. Occasionally do 5 hour, but very rarely. Today, Dr. Oz says obese diabetics should consider gastric bypass to reverse diabetes. I mean, gastric bypass I think is great, but I think you can also, it's usually not paid for by your insurance. It usually costs a lot of money, and I think you can do it with diet, exercise. I mean, they prove it that they can do it all the time on The Biggest Loser. Watch The Biggest Loser show. I mean, all those people, usually within about 3 weeks of being on the show, are off all their medications. Because just a small weight loss is going to give you remarkable benefits. So every bit helps. But I've seen people have gastric bypasses and do extraordinarily well, and I've also seen them have a lot of side effects from them. Oh, this has been one of the best webinars Building Strength has offered. Thank you. Wow, what a nice thing to say. You're so sweet. Any suggestions on cleaning and clearing the gallbladder versus getting it taken out? Well, there's a kind of a classic gallbladder flush that I've had people do, and it's been effective, and some of them hasn't hurt any of them, although I suppose there is the potential of causing it. But what you do is, let me see if I can remember it. You get up in the morning fasting, and you drink 2 tablespoons of warm olive oil. And then about 15 minutes later, you drink about 1/8 of a cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And what this does is it gets the gallbladder revved up, and then it has to deal with this massive amount of acid from the lemon juice, and it causes the gallbladder to spit out the stones. It can work. I've heard that it can work. It can help with kidney stones too. I don't know, but I've heard it definitely as a gallbladder flush. I've had people do it and it has been successful. I've had people do it and it didn't work because their gallstones were too big. I suppose the risk would be that you could push a nice big one on down into the tube and really clog it up, and then you'd really be in a mess. So, you know, you can do this at your own risk, but if they're really, really little stones, I've seen it, you know, they don't have any really big stones, I've seen it help. And so, but actually what I like to have people do is if they kind of have it in their family, a lot of people have gallstones in their family and that sort of thing, and also weight loss. If you're doing weight loss, it increases your risk of getting gallstones. So doing a gallbladder flush, you know, maybe every 2 weeks, just to keep it flushed, could maybe reduce your chances of getting one. You know, or maybe even once a month, just do a gallbladder flush. Just if there's any little bitty stones, it'll flush them out. So anyway, I hope that helps. What kind of fiber do you recommend? Right now, my favorite fiber is one made by a company called Wayora. It's called Superior Fiber Blend. There's another one that used to be out there called BioLife that was really good, but I don't even know if BioLife is out there anymore because that company isn't there anymore. But I could be wrong. But BioLife is and Superior Fiber Blend are basically about the same product, except for the Superior Fiber Blend has inulin in it, and it's sweetened with stevia, and I like that. But both of them have the insoluble fiber, the soluble fiber, and the plant sterols in generous amounts. So, and the product's not terribly expensive. It's about $40 for a great big tub. It's going to last you pretty close to 2 months. So I think it's a really good product, and I have seen fabulous results with people using it to help them with weight loss. It tastes good, and I've seen it lower people's cholesterol. So Superior Fiber Blend is what I usually use. What's the suggested dose of the detox that you recommend? It comes in powders and caps. There's liquid detoxes, there's powder detoxes, and there's some cap detox. The main thing is you want it to come from a reputable company. You want it to preferably have maybe at least a little bit of clinical studies, and you want it to be micronized and purified. The big dirty zeolite is going to have some benefit in the GI tract, meaning that it hasn't been micronized and it hasn't been cleaned, because raw zeolite is going to have toxins in it. It's just going to attract them from the air, it's going to attract them from the water, the ground, anything, wherever it's mined or found, it's going to have some toxins in it. There's not any pristine zeolite on the planet anymore. Luckily, over in Japan, they have a lot of seawater meeting volcanic ash, so they got bunches and bunches of zeolite over there helping to absorb all that radiation. But they've been dropping quinoctilolite around the power plant, and I'm sure they're not using the micronized stuff because they're too expensive. So I'm sure they're using the big dirty zeolite. But that's okay because it can absorb radiation. And but you know, if I'm going to put it in my body, I want to put in pristine cages, not dirty cages. Not because the dirty cages are going to harm me, but because there won't be any room for my toxins to go if it's big dirty zeolite. And I want it to work at the cellular level, so I want it to get into my body. So you want to get it that something is micronized down to, you know, as close to 1 micron as you can get, but probably anything 5 microns and less is going to get into the bloodstream. So that's what I am recommending. Can taking digestive enzymes cause any problems for your body? using its own digestive enzymes? I don't think so. Most of the time people take digestive enzymes because they are having some little GI upset, so their own digestive enzymes aren't really working as well as they should. I don't think you can get too many. I mean, I guess you could get, I guess you can get too many, much of anything, but not what you're just going to get in a supplement. There's a lot of different companies that sell digestive enzymes. There's a, what is the name of that company? There's a company over in Siloam Springs in Oklahoma, and I mean, this guy has his PhD, and his specialty is digestive enzymes, and he produces these wonderful digestive enzymes, and they're not expensive at all. If you'll write me, I'll give you his name. I can't remember it right now, but that's usually where I order my digestive enzymes. And I mean, you get a big bottle for 18 bucks or something, but you can get really good digestive enzymes at the store. Ultrazyme is one that I've used also that you can get at the health food store. That's a really good digestive enzyme. Oh, that's why I've never done that flush, because I don't want to plug with a big stone. So, yeah. So I'd like to think that, I think it's better for just kind of a prevention. You know, you don't have stones, but, you know, your family does, or you're dieting and you know that increases your risk, then you could go ahead and maybe do it. But if you actually know you have stones, I probably wouldn't recommend it that much. Yeah, somebody says if you eat raw, you don't need digestive enzymes. Probably not, but some people actually are deficient in digestive enzymes, and especially when you start eating a raw diet, you really might not have what you need, and you might end up with more indigestion from that. So maybe even if you just do some digestive enzymes in the beginning when you start eating raw, and then after your body's really used to that, then you probably won't need digestive enzymes. Oh, the digestive enzyme. Ultrazyme is the one that I've used a lot of, and a lot of people will take Ultrazyme when they are lactose intolerant, and it really helps with that. And then these other digestive enzymes that, and I just cannot remember the name of that company, but if you'll email me, I've got their brochure in my drawer at work. I just don't have it here at home. Well, that looks like that's all the questions. My gosh, you guys have stuck it out. You get a big star on your refrigerator tomorrow. And so I hope you found that helpful. Still have 29 people on the who stuck it to the last. So I appreciate that. You like stars? I know. I like stickers too. So, well, I hope that was helpful for you. And if you need anything, just write me, ToxinClear, Vicki Latham, toxinclear@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to try to help you out. I'm now going to exit the webinar.
Will be disconnected.